Hey folks, it's your host, Anthony Desiato. It's Christmas time again here at My Comic Shop History. Welcome to our second annual holiday special. This year, I am proud to present a terrific double feature. Last week, I sat down with returning guest Chris Wilcock of Undiscovered Realm to talk market trends, moving a store, the inside scoop on running a comic book convention, and of course, Pops. Then, early Sunday morning, I ventured to Mendham, New Jersey to visit It's Vintage, a mecca of toys and collectibles that must be seen to be believed. I had a great chat with the store's owner, Baus, about his comic shop history, the timeless appeal of the Kenner Superpowers line of action figures, and the ins and outs of running his shop, which consists almost entirely of his personal collection. It's a holiday podcast extravaganza, two in-depth one-on-one conversations not to be missed. I hope you enjoy. Dan, cue the music. Hey, Dan. Actually, would you mind putting a little holiday spin on the theme song for our Christmas special? Dan Pritchard, ladies and gentlemen.
Ho, 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 ho.
Welcome to the My Comic Shop History Season 2 Christmas Special. I am your host once again, Anthony Desiato. For this year's Christmas special, I wanted to make it a little bit more holiday-themed, holiday-centric than it was last time. So I started thinking, what would be the perfect gift for a collector? We spent an entire season talking about collecting, and the answer was obvious. It must be Funko's Pop vinyl figures. And if we're going to be talking Pops, there's really only one person to talk to as far as I'm concerned. So please welcome back to the show, Mr. Chris Wilcock.
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here.
Yeah, you joined us for the 5th episode of Season 2, and we had a terrific discussion on the ins and outs of collecting the Funko Pop vinyls. And so now we're back here for our Christmas special, and we'll get into it again.
Cool. Let's rock.
Yeah. So I actually saw you recently at a wedding of a mutual friend of ours, where we commiserated over how much neither of us enjoys dancing.
Yes. Not my favorite thing to do in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's hard because it's like, I mean, I don't know, exactly what it is for you. For me, it's like I'm not good at it. I don't particularly enjoy it, and I'm very self-conscious about it. So it's the trifecta.
It's exactly that. It's all three of those things, and I don't like, for somebody who I do a lot of things where I'm like, not the center of attention, but in attention. But I don't like being like the center of attention. And not that you are at a wedding while you're dancing, but like, everyone's like, oh, look, the guy who hates dancing's dancing. So by not liking it, you become the center of attention, and it just proliferates the problem.
Yeah. And it breaks my heart because my now wife, she loves to dance, and she's a great dancer. And it's like, I wish that I could be there with her in that way, but it's just hard.
Do you think that if you like took lessons with her or something like that, you would like doing it more if you felt like you were good at it? Because I don't know, maybe if I was good at it, I'd like to do it, but it's not anything I have a desire to do. So I don't know if that would satisfy the thing that would make me not hate it so much,
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's that's a tough nut to crack. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, no dancing here.
No. One of my favorite parts of the wedding was when we stepped outside to talk Pops.
Yeah. It's a nice change of pace, a palate cleanser.
Yeah. And actually, so I wanted to mention this too, and I know we spoke about it at the wedding, but when Steph and I were on our honeymoon in October, we were in Hawaii. We spent some time on Maui and then in Honolulu. And we visited a quartet of comic shops. And I wanted to mention it on the show. Obviously, this is my comic shop history, and it's always interesting to go to different comic shops. And I'm always fascinated by how they're, the layout and the atmosphere and just the interactions, with the people behind the counter. It's always fascinating.
Yeah. And especially if you're in a new place. Because, I'm always curious if, like, it's regional or it's just the same. You have the same jaded guy behind the counter in every comic store in the country.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. So Maui, there was really only, I think, one shop, and it was kind of far from where we were, so we didn't get to it. but in Honolulu, a surprisingly robust comic shop scene. Like it was, I mean, it's a huge city, so I'm not surprised.
Is that like
but
the touristy area? I know Honolulu's
yeah.
a big area, but that makes more sense.
But we went to 4 different stores. One of them made me think of you. It was called Other Realms.
Yeah, I saw the picture. I was cracking up. I'm like, this is pretty hilarious.
Obviously, you're one of the owners of Undiscovered Realm currently in Hartsdale, but soon to be in White Plains.
Yeah.
We're actually recording in what will be the new location in just a few weeks.
It's just an empty room right now. But a couple weeks away.
But yeah, I definitely want to talk about, moving the store, a little bit later in the episode. But yeah, that store made me think of you. That was a very impressive store. It was a rather large space, and just in terms of the amount and variety of merchandise, it was really quite impressive. They had a lot. It was extremely well organized, and they had a lot of space to work with. There was an entire section for supplies. Bags, boards, card protectors. I mean, normally, stores have that, but it's a little section. This was an entire area of the store dedicated to that.
That's crazy. And I'm surprised to hear it because, usually it's because space is just, a premium, especially in an area like that where rent's probably not very affordable. So that's crazy. That's cool, though.
Yeah, so that was a cool store to go to. And that store had, I don't know exactly how long it had been there, but there was a sign when it celebrated its 25th anniversary. So it's been at least that long. But so yeah, that was quite the find. Not too much in terms of action figures or statues, but I mean a full selection of comics, back issues, trade paperbacks, the supply section, the gaming section, and they did have pops. They had a decent amount. Like it was more than as if they were, they just kind of wanted to have it just to have it, but it wasn't like Undiscovered Realm.
Yeah.
Although, exactly. But it was a decent amount of pops. But that was an interesting store. Probably the highlight, though, for me was a store called Gecko Comics, which I walked in and it was like being in alternate realities again.
Oh, wow.
Just in terms of how much was stuffed in there. It just looked like AR. It was incredible.
So it's a good and bad thing, with comic stores, that's like you need the space, but at the same time you want it to be like friendly and organized. That's like my eternal struggle. It's like we only have X amount of space, but I love the way the neat freak in me wants everything perfect and laid out, and it makes a difference. But sometimes there's a charm to it. Like I said, for you it's because you're so used to alternate, but for a lot of people they might prefer that. So it's always interesting to see the different approaches, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because, with alternate realities, we always talked about this. I mean, we always complained about how messy and cluttered it was. But on the flip, the flip side of that was, that clutter is an opportunity for discovery, right?
Yeah.
Like you could spend an entire day there going through things. And that's what it was like at Gecko Comics. I mean, we were in there, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, but we could have easily spent the entire afternoon and probably still not have gotten to everything. There was so
awesome.
much. So again, it's like, in one way it's cool, but at the same time, it's like, was it super easy to find what I was looking for?
Yeah.
I don't know. But they really had a lot. It was very much like AR. They had a pretty sizable pop collection, but this drove me nuts. And I know I mentioned it to you. You really couldn't see them all that well. They were all sideways, so you could kind of read the name on the side of the box. But it was not a great display.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, and you don't even save. I've obviously done the math on this. You don't save that much space. It's like depending on the length of your shelf, maybe you can fit 2 more pops. And it looks so much worse. I don't know, but I guess you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, but it was an interesting experience. There were a couple other shops as well, but those two really stood out to me. It's funny, one of the other stores, it was kind of a random assortment of things. Like they didn't seem fully committed to any one thing. It was just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But the wall of new comics, literally every single comic on that wall was bagged, which was something I had never seen at any store before. And when I went up to the guy, because I bought a little Superpowers keychain, and when I went up to him, I was like, wow, that's really impressive that you bag all the books. And he wasn't rude, but he was kind of like, well, all the stores do that here because of the salt and the ocean air.
I was going to say that. That's what I figured.
Yeah, although that was one of the last stores that we went to, and none of the other ones did that. So
were they as close to the water? I mean, I know it's an island, but
yeah, at least one of them was.
Yeah, because I know, like with like Magic cards, for instance, like there's obviously foil versions, and they're just premium versions. But like, people will come in from other countries sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, the foils are worthless in our country because they just warp immediately from the humidity and things like that. So nobody wants them. So things that are like a super premium here, people literally just don't want over there. So the guy travels around, he can get them cheap there, sell them high here, and then do the reverse and pay for his travels. But yeah, that's always interesting. But that makes sense.
Yeah, so at least some stores in Hawaii bag all their books. But yeah, it was interesting. It's always fascinating to me to go in and experience those other stores. So
I agree. I love it. My wife hates. I think I talked about this last time, but like I just love going in, even if it's a Target or something. Like you never know what you're gonna find there. You've exhausted your local area, so she hates it though.
Yeah, I have to say, Steph was a good sport about it, and she took my picture in each place. I'm like, I gotta get photos. So yeah, it was a good time, and
Cool.
Again, surprising to find in Hawaii. So it was kind of neat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Could be an area for this podcast to go in the future, kind of maybe not back to Hawaii, but, but checking out other shops in different places.
No, that's really, there's a lot of cool space there to work with.
Now, moving back into pop territory.
Yeah.
So when I had you on the show last time, I gave you a nickname of Wilcock. Has anybody taken to calling you that or not
for
so
like
much?
3 days or so, it was a thing. Thankfully, it died. I'm sure it'll kick back up now. I don't care. It's funny. So I don't mind, but yeah, no. I thought for sure like people would be chomping at the bit to get me because I like to mess with people. So, but no, it didn't stick too much. I did like the King of Pops thing though. That was pretty cool. I thought about stealing that tagline.
Hey
man,
have at it. That's all yours. Well, you actually we had a Facebook exchange not long after, and you gave yourself yet another nickname that I liked a lot. Popstradamus.
Oh, yeah. I was right, though. I predicted
right.
a lot of things. I was pretty spot on.
Right. So that was it with respect to the Power Rangers Pops, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talked last time, we talked about the original 3 Power Rangers, white, red, and pink, that Funko put out a while back. They're very hard to find, and I happen to have them.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about their value and whether we should hold on to them and whatnot. And I guess at the time you predicted that Funko would do the rest of the Rangers and or re-release those 3.
Both, yeah. And I also said green metallic Ranger would be a New York Comic Con exclusive, so I nailed that one too.
Yeah,
I was spot on that day. Not always, but that day I was.
So yeah, since then they did the rest of the original Rangers, so green, black, yellow, and blue. And I have all of those now, so I have the complete team. And they are re-releasing, well, maybe not re-releasing, because they are different poses for the red, pink, and white.
So the reason, for those of you that aren't familiar, they vault things or retire them. So once they stop making them, they go up in value. So like these Rangers are a couple $100 a piece currently, but they've been releasing a lot of stuff that's vaulted in new poses, and sometimes they're a lot better. So it's kind of an interesting thing we can delve into later about like the pop market. It's definitely something that I kind of see coming with the higher end stuff. Maybe having a slight downtick because instead of things being, if you wanted the White Ranger up until, later this month, that's the only way you could get it. So you either shelled out the money, you had it already, or you don't have it. Now you have a $10 option instead of a $300 option, and a lot of people are not going to care. Except the really hardcore, completists or things like that. So I think like some of the pops you might want to get out of, or wait a little while and then get into. It depends on what your collecting method is, but it's definitely going to make a difference because it's not just the Power Rangers that it's happening with.
Yeah, well, I have to say I'm happy that the new ones that they're doing have different poses. It would have bugged me if they were really just re-releases.
Yeah, they won't do
3.
that. They've been very good with keeping their it's retired,
right.
And they need to do that because that's key to people having faith in the market. If your investment can just be worth $10 out of nowhere, people aren't going to really do it, and then long term it affects the whole thing and it all goes down the hill. So. But yeah, they're cool. They're actually better than the original ones by a wide margin. But the other thing to keep in mind too is when Funko first started, and we talked about this last time too, the paint quality wasn't great. So by default, even if the poses weren't cooler, just paint application and all that is so much nicer now. So
now so those original 3 Rangers, do you expect that the value will kind of stay where it is? I feel like it would almost have to dip at least a little bit.
I think there would be some kind of a dip. I would predict off the top of my head maybe like a 10 to 20% dip. I don't think it'll like bottom out or crash, the market for the high end stuff at all, because there's still going to be the people that want every single variation and people that take pride in having the one that nobody else has and things like that. And it could it could stay the same too. There still is a really finite amount of them out there, so it's not like a ton may hit the open market. But you might have a lot of people like say, you're like, I can get a couple $100 for this one. That's 20 other Pops I can buy, and I'm still gonna have a White Ranger, so maybe I just do that. And then there's gonna be people that want to keep them. So it really depends on how people react to the market. But then sometimes too, not just with Pops, but with cards and things like that too. When things bottom out too much, people come in and buy them all up because they know that they're going to go back up. And so then the price doesn't really dip for too long because they all get sucked up. So it's really weird to watch these things happen and interesting. And you notice trends for sure. Like I guarantee you January, February, we're going to see a big explosion in a lot of prices every year when tax return season happens. Every year. And it's going to happen. Last year, a lot of the crazy prices we see now are from last year and they stuck.
Okay.
So that's going to be the real determining factor. And during this time of year is the best time to buy. Everybody panics. They think the markets. I see posts all the time. Oh, are the Pops crashing? Or with everything, Magic cards, you name it. Because everybody needs money for the holidays, so they're not buying as much. They're selling stuff to raise money for the holidays. They're waiting to get gifts, and so the prices not plummet, but bottom out a bit right now, and then skyrocket right afterwards. So, and it happens every year, and nobody seems to ever notice this. I don't understand. Like, if you had a large amount of money, you could really take huge advantage of these swings. And I'm sure people do for sure. But yeah, right now, this moment when you're listening to this podcast is the time to buy. And then in January, February, you're going to see a big uptick.
Well, hopefully people will heed your advice.
Yeah, I guarantee it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I have not done yet is buy a Pop purely for investment purposes. Even the Power Rangers ones, that was a happy accident.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, remove all the business aspects from things. That is the way you should collect. You don't buy stuff you don't like just because you think it might go up. If you love it and it goes up, then great. That's just a nice cherry on top. But you shouldn't be buying 20 of something just because you know it's going to go up, unless that's your end game, and that's fine too. But if you're really a collector at heart, you don't want to stare at something you hate every day. So.
Right. I wanted to ask you, this is as political as this show will ever get.
Yeah.
Funko did Pops of Trump, Hillary, and Bernie. What was the story with those? Huge demand for them? How did that unfold?
They did these probably 6 months ago, so everybody was still in the running at that point. And so I'll be right off the top. I ordered, trying to predict the market, I ordered probably 3 times as much Bernie Sanders, 2 times as much Trump, 1 times as much Hillary, and it was spot on. So I probably could have sold 6 times as many Bernies, honestly. The Trumps took, Bernie we sold out of immediately, and we still have people looking for, and now obviously it's harder to find. Trump we sold out of pretty quick, and Hillary sat on the shelf. And, you could say the writing was on the wall for what was going to happen, I guess. But now, I don't know what Hillary's at. She's probably pretty cheap, but if you try to find a Trump right now, and I'm sure they'll make more, he's like $40 online, and he's hard to find. Bernie, I think that one has a lot of upside. He's still cheap, but they're not going to make more of those, and there's a lot of people that really probably want that one more than anything. And what was funny, and we won't delve into politics at all, but I had people buying 2-3 Trumps at a time because they're like, I'm customizing them to make devils, or I'm going to melt one, or I'm not even joking. This all literally happened. So that definitely helped the Trump sales for sure, but nobody cared about Hillary at all. I think I ordered 6 Hillary Clintons, and we had 5 of them for like 3 months. We don't have any now, but yeah.
So the people who came in, well, other than those,
that was the lion's share. I'd say 75% of the sales were to people that hated Trump.
That is very interesting. Because I guess my question was going to be, and maybe this would apply to the ones who bought Hillary and or Bernie, but were they buying them? As collectors, or what was it? They were more speculators, or you think they just really were supporters and they just wanted to have it?
I think it was a mix of things. It's kind of more of a novelty thing, but definitely most of the people were supporters, especially on the Bernie side. That was like people that legitimately loved Bernie Sanders. The other ones, like I said, the lion's share was Trump haters, and then the rest were people who really like Trump. I'd say those 2 camps were really fervent in what they liked, and the Hillary people were just kind of lukewarm. Like a lot of women bought the Hillary ones, which makes sense, But yeah, that's about the trends of it.
It's funny because I think back to working at Alternate Realities, and there was, and I guess still is, I don't know if they're still in operation, a publisher called Blue Water Comics, and they again, they used to. I don't know if this still happens, but they used to do these biography comics, and I remember they did Obama, and they did a lot of other ones. I think they did an Oprah one at one point. But the political ones, especially, I'm thinking of the Obama one, and they just bombed. Like nobody was ever really into those. But I guess the pop, the pop
but
appeal.
Look on the flip side, didn't that Spider-Man comic would Obama sell like insane amount of copies and reprint still holy hell?
Yeah,
So.
I guess when you fuse it with a fun collectible or a character like Spider-Man, it's a little different story.
Well, think about it too. There's you buy a comic or a biography, especially, like it doesn't really show anything. Like you can put that on your desk. You can. Well, look at it. How many president collectibles are there? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and it's interesting, especially Trump has more pop culture appeal to it too than like your normal president would. So it's interesting for sure. We were at a convention like 2 weeks ago, and the guy next to us had a signed Trump pop, so I bought it. I'm not a big Trump fan, I'll leave it at that. But I bought it. You were talking about speculating. I'm like, this is signed by the president, like. How many action figures or toys of presidents are signed? You know what I mean? It's
right.
kind of weird. And so I'm like, I'll sit on this for a while and see what happens. And like the market was all over the place. I was looking on eBay. They're going from like $200 to $800. And like pre-election, they were like $70, $70. And then they were just going all over the place. So, it might settle at a nice price, and I'm fine. I was going to get it as a Christmas present for somebody that I know originally. And then it was a little too pricey for that. And then the guy's like, oh, you like Trump? I got something for you tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see. And he comes in with a Make America Great hat again. He's like, here you go. So we've been using that to just mess with people all week.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we're at work. We're doing a Secret Santa, and one of my coworkers may have voted for Trump, and I got her for the Secret Santa, and I was gonna get the Trump pop.
Yeah, it's hard right now.
I know.
I've had post election too. Last week I probably had 10 people message me online looking for the Trump pop. You can't find it anywhere right now. Dig in some FYEs or something like that. Barnes and Noble. They're probably rotting somewhere.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's interesting. If you don't mind me asking, how much did you pay for the
I got him. He wanted $250. I paid $200 for it. So I figured I hedged my bets. At $200, I'm not going to lose money, and the upside is really high. And I as soon as I took a picture of it, I had like 5 people try and buy it off me. So it's easy to get rid of. And he's a president, so we'll see what happens. For better or worse, it's going to be worth something.
Yeah. So speaking of work, so I recently got promoted at work, and I'm actually going to thank you. Yeah. So for the past few years, I work at Pace Law School. I've been in a little cubicle area, which I actually kind of like because nobody knows I'm there. It's just kind of tucked away.
It's cool. It has its own appeal.
Yeah. But I'm going to have a proper office now with a door and everything, which is nice. And there's shelves. So I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I could bring some pops in.
I have this. I own a couple businesses, but I don't have an office, and I don't want I just a desk and some shelves. That's all I really want. And they joke about it all the time because we're in the new store and there's 2 offices, and we decided we were going to use them for storage instead of office space, just because we wanted to maximize our retail sales. And everyone's like, you had the office and you didn't take it. Oh, you're never getting that. And they always bust my balls about it. We were just doing it the other day. And for that reason, though, it'd be so nice to just have a nice quiet area to work, have some stuff around, But that'll be perfect. You should definitely do that.
Yeah. Well, so for the cubicle, I've only decorated it with 2 things in 4 years. One is a picture of me and my wife, and the other one is a pop. It's the Clark Kent exclusive,
the cool
which
one.
I love that so much.
It's funny about that pop. Just side note, like we and we'll segue into the other thing later. We're doing this holiday show right now, which we'll talk about in a bit. And Superman stuff really doesn't sell well for us in general. It's as superheroes, it's right there with like Aquaman or something. And but we get these like. With that particular pop you're talking about, it's Clark Kent like opening his shirt, the classic pose with the Superman S. And we get these like once a week. We'll get a guy that comes in and he's like, he doesn't give a crap about the pops. He's like, he's with his kid or something like that. And he's like, oh my God, like I need this. And we'll be like, oh, sorry, that one's like $20 or $25, but whatever it is. He's like, I don't care, like whatever this costs, I need this pop. And you don't really get that reaction from anything, but it's happened like 4 times in the last month. And we were having a conversation about that too the other day, because one of the guys, when I wasn't working, he's like, yo, this guy came in, he went nuts for, and I was like, that happened to me last week, and only that popped. So I guess it's a cool one.
Yeah, something about it. It is, I mean, talking about how, how much better they are now than they were in the beginning, just in terms of the quality of the sculpts, the painting, and all of that. I mean, it really is an impressive one. I actually got 2. I have one for home and one for the office.
There you go. That's how good it is.
But yeah, but now for the new space, I'm kind of debating how many pops. Like how many is too many to bring in?
How do you choose what you bring there versus home, or do you get two of them? You know, that's the eternal thing too. Because I would love to have my collection in both. You know, you're half-assed in both places. Then I hate that.
It's tough. I mean, the Clark Kent one, that was an exception where I got two. I really wouldn't double dip with the rest. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Well, I know at the wedding we talked about the Stranger Things pops, and I'm still kind of on the fence about, do I get them? How many do I get? Because literally, if I got all of them, or even just the ones that I want, because there are a couple that I could do without, it would be another shelf. Yeah. And I don't really have the space.
Yeah.
So
no, I know. I'm currently, I'll probably move sometime this year or, eventually. But I'm tapped out of space, and I just have a pile of pops. And I don't buy a lot of pops. I mean, like I say, I don't buy a lot. I have like 100 something. But like if I wanted all the ones I really wanted, I have like 500 at this point. So I just have a pile there. I just got Bill and Ted yesterday, and they're just sitting on and I'm just looking at all these things just rotting away in the boxes on my desk. But like, I like knowing I have them, I guess, even though I don't see them. But that's the eternal
Be careful.
struggle.
That's the Steve Odo
mentality. I know. But that's the eternal struggle, the collector's struggle. And like some people just like are like, what is wrong with you people? But we get it. I understand.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll probably bring in at least some. I don't want to overdo it. But it'd be fun to kind of give the office some color.
Yeah,
and that's my personality.
Conversation start. That's what I was just gonna say. Like it's. I talk about like tattoos or toys. You go to someone's house, look at their toy collection, you see their tattoos, whatever. Like you can tell a lot about a person. Like I meet people at conventions that like they could be like my best friend or soulmate or something, and these are the things that drum up those conversations. And if you just walk past them in the street, you'd never know. And it's cool. That's one of the things I really like about collecting.
Yeah, no, I agree. So going back to Power Rangers. So we were talking about this before we sat down to record. Again, the full original team is out now. They're re-releasing. They're doing the new versions of the first three. They're doing movie versions.
Yeah, they're an interesting tidbit with that we'll go back to, actually.
But then going back to the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I think it was just announced today that there's going to be a Walmart exclusive of Alpha 5.
Yep.
And you were mentioning Rita and Goldar.
Yeah, I remember this from like 6 months ago when Alpha leaked out. Today they showed the picture, which is why everybody's talking about it. It kind of flew under the radar, but I'm pretty sure Hot Topic's getting Rita and Goldar. Which would be cool. And I feel like there might have been a putty or something, too. I'd like a Lord Zed, but I haven't seen that made yet.
Well, how is there not a Zordon, though? I mean, the Pops are big heads, and he's all head.
It's just a head. I think they're also making teleporting Rangers next year, and I don't know what they're going to be. Either probably like have the blur behind them, or like they might just be like unmasked, as the teenagers, like
that would be cool.
That would be cool.
I like that.
So I don't know what those are going to be yet. So I'm sure the whole thing's coming. You're going to get your Bulk and Skull, and they're not stupid. They're going to tap into this, and you have the movie versions coming from the new movie that's coming out next year, and I'm hoping they do like at least like a 6-inch like Megazord, Dragonzord. That would be cool too. So we'll see. I'm sure they're far from done, so just get prepared.
That's like Power Rangers for me. That's something that's pure nostalgia because I don't still follow it or watch it, but I have such fond memories as a kid. Whereas everything else, like all the superhero stuff, it's like I got into it as a kid, and so it does take me back to that. But it's like it's something that I've always been into.
Yeah.
And I see you have there
so random
one of the trading cards.
My best friend Andre, we were playing Magic the other day, and he's like, oh, I found this at my house. He's using it as a token, so he's like, oh, I got this for you, So it was in my pocket, so I pulled it out with my phone. It's sitting on the table, but yeah, even down to that, I was like, this is 20-something years old at this point, and it's cool.
I used to have an entire binder full of all of them.
And then the sticker ones that had like the album that you could stick them in.
Yeah.
They were cool.
And I think when I moved, I just threw them out.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things like you don't expect to keep, but it'd be cool to look back through now, I was going through my storage a couple months ago, and I found the gloves that they made. And it just looks like the Rangers gloves, but when you like karate chop, it makes the,
nice.
and it Go-Go Power Rangers and stuff like that. They're cool, but it's fun to find that. I totally forgot I had it. I probably haven't seen them in 20 years, and they were just buried in a box with stuff. So it was really cool. It's nice to look through.
It's funny. Do you remember Service Merchandise
on
Central Avenue? So I remember one time when I was
beeper there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going back.
I remember there was a Power Ranger toy that came out when I was little. Like, for the life of me, I can't remember exactly what it was. It was probably a dagger.
The dragon
of
dagger?
some sort.
Not the Green Ranger dagger?
Was there a red something?
Oh, the blaster?
Maybe the blaster.
So the blaster had a little knife that flipped up from underneath.
Yes.
And it came with the morpher. They came together.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure, don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And I remember the day it came out, I was so little, and my grandparents took me to Service Merchandise. This is heartbreaking. And there was a guy who got there a little bit before me, and he bought out. No, he bought out a bunch of them. It broke my heart. I never got it. I don't think. Yeah, I know.
He probably had a store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
God, breaking hearts.
That was rough.
When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, so I'd always go everywhere with my grandparents. Speaking of that, and that's one of the things I actually got. I remember going to the Toys R Us on Central, and walking up the hill, and like unpacking the box, and standing at the bus stop with a morpher. I have like a really fond memory of that. They did make that with the legacy ones, like they're remaking all the Zords and stuff, metal. They made the morphers and they made the blaster, so you can finally get it for yourself. It's cool.
Yeah, the Power Ranger stuff, especially the pops in particular, I think those are going to be hard to pass up for me. The movie ones, I got to see the movie first.
Remain to be seen.
I got to see the movie
I'm
first.
trying to go in with an open mind. I didn't mind the trailer, but some of the did you see the Megazord?
Yeah.
Oh my God! And the toy morpher came out the other day. It's awful.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a little nervous. And the Alpha 5 design, like everybody hated. I didn't even like completely hate it, but like now I'm getting a little nervous. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, so we'll see.
But the Rangers look cool. Did you see the pops? The movie ones?
No, I don't know that I actually saw
I'll try and find it after we're done. I'll show you a picture. They leaked out a couple days ago. They actually look okay. Out of all the things that I've seen, they're the only ones that I'm like, okay. Right. But we'll see.
Now, what would be on your wish list other than a Zed? Anything else? Power Rangers?
Power Rangers, like I said, the 6-inch Dragon Zord or something like that would be cool. There's not a lot because, like you said, I stopped watching like a little while after the movie came out. So after the second cast, I never watched it. And I was having a conversation about this too with somebody recently. I'm like, I don't know why I stopped watching because it's not like my interest teetered off. I just one day I can't even remember it. I just stopped watching something I loved so much, and I don't know why.
Almost the same thing happened to me. It's really weird.
I find it a lot. Yeah. I mean, you don't know. You don't hear people talking about, man, I really loved Power Rangers Zeo. Like you do sometimes. There's people that love the whole series, and I hear it's still pretty good. But and it's still on to this day. But I don't know why. Like, what the hell happened? Like somebody flipped a switch, and we all just stopped carrying it. I don't know.
I stopped somewhere during Zeo. I did get that
I probably
far.
got about that far.
Because I remember watching the Gold Ranger stuff.
Yeah, I stopped right before that. But I was probably a year or two older. I was at the tail end of people who liked Power Rangers. So I probably lost interest slightly before everybody else.
Yeah, I remember what happened with me in, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Everyone was into it. That was the thing to watch. Then third grade, people were starting to fall off, but it was still cool to watch Power Rangers. By fourth grade, I was one of the only people who was still into it. That might have been part of it.
Maybe,
right? I was just
maybe.
I'm not going to watch it anymore.
That could have been for me too. Like I said, I was a little older, so already a lot of my friends could care less about Power Rangers. Half of them did, half of them were like, "What are you watching?" So that probably had a lot to do with it. I don't know, but it's so weird. I've never had something I love so much fall off, and to the point that 20-something years later, we're rebuying these toys. So we obviously really like the damn things. I don't know, but yeah, the pops will be cool. But yeah, aside from the Zords, I don't know what else they could make. Who else is there to make?
Yeah, I mean, I think again doing the the unmasked versions, those could be cool. A Gold Ranger.
Yeah, you see, I didn't get into that, so there's nothing. The white was the newest color I ever was a fan of. So, but yeah, that's it. But they still have a lot to do. You do Bulk, Skull, Zordon.
Yeah, well, you could do the ninja outfits.
The ninja outfits from the movies is what I expected. And going back to the movie ones, like you were saying, so they came out recently. GameStop had a blue metallic Ranger, and it was exclusive, and it had the movie coin in the chest.
Okay.
And then on Black Friday, they had these mystery boxes, and you got there was 5 different pops you could get, and then gold versions. So you could get metallic Yellow Ranger or a gold Yellow Ranger, and but the Yellow Ranger had the regular coin in the chest from the show. So I'm like, all right, something's up here. Why did they make this one? And I didn't know which is the error at this point because there's one of each. But then this month, Hot Topic is releasing the metallic pink and the metallic red, and they both have the movie coins.
Okay.
So Funko actually said, yeah, we screwed up on the yellow one. So I don't know if they're going to release another version of it now. So that could make the other one. It was already a 1 in 5 shot in a $20 mystery box that you were even going to get it in the first place. And, so they're kind of scarce. And then if that becomes some weird error, who knows? It could, do something to the price. But so they're going to have to make another one of those. And still no black metallic or white. So those are definitely coming from somewhere, but I don't know where. So that's another thing to look for. And they've held their price pretty well, too. So that's something worth buying. Because, the day you get it, it's worth twice as much. And I'm not saying to do it from a strictly financial, but it's nice to know that, you're $15 just turned into 30, and who knows, might be a couple hundred like your original ones did.
Yeah.
It's better than it being worth nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Well, so circling back to our holiday theme
Yeah.
here. So what I want to talk about the Winter Wonderland thing that you're doing,
Yeah,
but
for
what
sure.
are the hot pops this holiday season?
Still, the hot pops from earlier in the season have definitely carried over. As far as like for instance, there's a lot of price spikes. I know I said before the market kind of deflates, but if it's a hot gift item, the opposite happens. So you see things like right now, the Golden Girls, for instance, are all $30+ on eBay. And, I sold hundreds of those things early in the year for $10 a piece. You can't sit on things forever, but it's like, geez, these items have a very low margin. So like when there is an opportunity to get like, $30, it's because nobody has them anymore because they sold so well. And they're back ordered for months from Funko and yada, yada, yada. So the Golden Girls are definitely up there, but those were hot when they came out. Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad, still crazy popular. Can't get them.
The exclusives or the
No,
regular
the
one?
regular one.
Oh,
The
interesting.
regular one right now goes for as much as the exclusives because you can't find a damn thing.
Huh.
And Negan from The Walking Dead, the most popular pop right now. And that one recently came out, so it's because it's popular and because it's the holidays. He's over $30 now online too. And I'm sure there's a couple more like that. I'm always interested in looking at the trends on the prices like that to see like what the interest is for holidays, but those are the big ones, and then everything else is still really popular. Like the X-Men ones just came out. Those have been a really big seller. Pinky and the Brain and the Animaniacs kind of popular. A lot of new Harry Potter ones just came out, and I've seen a big revitalization in Harry Potter since Fantastic Beasts.
Sure.
So the Fantastic Beasts ones have been very popular, but it really revitalized, and I'm seeing a lot of little kids that are were -10 when Harry Potter came out, like coming in like, oh, Hermione, Ron, blah, 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 So it definitely did a lot to get more people into it. So I'd say those are the big ones right now.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, and we must have touched on it at some point in the first episode, but like the ratio of kids to adults who are coming in for this stuff?
It's more adults, I'd say. But we do a lot of conventions, and our store has a lot more adult customers than kids. So maybe it's a little skewed for me, but I think it's definitely more adults. And the kids that are buying them with their parents who are also buying them.
Right.
Most of the time. It's very rare that a little kid comes in and is like, oh, I really want this pop. And, we're doing that holiday show, Winter Wonderland, which you just talked about. So it's almost all exclusively families. And we're getting a lot of parents coming in like, what the hell are these bobblehead things? Like, and we have such a big wall of them. They immediately know like they've missed something because they're like, yo, what did I miss? Like you have a million of these, like, so obviously it's a thing. Like, and you have to explain it to them. And if I had a dime for every time I heard someone walk by and be like, oh, the bobblehead booth,
Right.
and but that's the really easiest way to explain it to somebody traditionally, even though they don't have that deformed shape, for the most part. But so yeah, that's definitely the thing. It's a lot of adults, which is interesting.
It must be tough for kids because they're not.
They're not action
collectibles, they're
figures.
plastic, but
Yeah.
you can't pose them.
Yeah.
You can't do
And the other
any-
thing too is like 90% of these properties are not kids'
That's
properties.
true,
Some
too.
of them are. Like we sell a ton of Disney stuff and Frozen and Secret Life of Pets. That's what all the kids want, for the most part, unless they have parents that are big collectors too, and then they're like into. You'll see them like, oh, I love Evil Dead, or something. It's so random to have like a 7-year-old come in like, oh, Ash, oh my god, but it happens time to time. But yeah, I think that's mostly it is what the properties are. Because when you have a Frozen or something like that, they do go crazy for them. So
Now, you mentioned the Harley Quinn one being hot, and that was actually something I wanted to ask you, because, Suicide Squad came out, and it was not the best received movie. And I was just curious how, if at all, that affected the interest in the pops.
not at all. Let me tell you.
Interesting.
DC, if they lost money on that movie, which they didn't, it still made a good amount
Right,
of money.
yeah, financially
maybe
it
it
did well.
didn't do what they wanted, but it still did very well.
Yep.
The merchandise sales have made them very rich. I will promise you that, because there was a huge wave, like a huge wave when the movie came out. Then like the last 6 weeks, 2 months or so, it's died down. And now that it's on Blu-ray, it all over again. And all these little kids are coming. And what's funny is like the stuff that not to say we couldn't sell, but like Rick Flag, Katana, things like that, we're only really selling when somebody's buying the full set of all of them.
Okay.
Nobody was coming. But like these little kids, it's like we keep saying it's like the Twilight Zone or Bizarro World at the show we're at right now, because they want all this stuff that nobody's wanted all year, which is great. But like they're like, oh my God, Rick Flag, Katana,
Christmas Miracle.
El Diablo. Like, and we're like, yes, El Diablo. keep buying them, please. I got cases of El Diablo. But But yeah, so it's great. But it's nice to see them happy. Like, that is, I'm not jaded and cynical yet. I'm sure 20 years from now you talk to me and be like, these fucking kids. But I still really do like seeing, like, the smile on their faces and when they truly love a character because you can relate to it. It's nice.
Yeah. No, I mean, to see that excitement. I mean, it's one thing to sell it to an adult who is going to add it to their collection. Like, that's nice and everything. But, to see that
pure
enjoyment.
Unadulterated joy,
Yeah. Well, the Suicide Squad, so we have the Joker and Harley, just the regular versions.
Yeah, those were definitely the two biggest, obviously. 20-1 on everything else.
But, we debated getting the full set. But we said, we're like, well, let's see how
There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, well,
there's a lot of them.
There's that, and we were like, well, let's see the movie first. And then after we saw the movie, like, we're not huge fans, and it was just like, you know what, the Harley and Joker are sufficient. So I was just curious, but that's great to hear that didn't diminish.
No, it didn't at all. And all the characters were pretty. Deadshot was also pretty popular from the beginning.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah, that makes sense.
It wasn't Harley level or Joker level, but still. But yeah, no, but it's I think that helps me a lot too. Is like, I'm a huge movie fan, so like I kind of have some idea going in, like, all right, I should order a little bit of these, or I should order a lot of these, and most of the time I'm right. You hit or miss sometimes, obviously, but that helps. So but you can also tell, even if you knew nothing about movies and you just sold toys, you can tell like what's going on in the world just off of that, and when it happens, and like right now the Rogue One stuff's trickling out. And then in like 2 weeks, it's just going to be like, oh my God, do you have Jin or do you have this or do you have that? Especially with that, because people don't even know who the hell these characters are. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah. So now when you're placing your orders, we're moving away from the holidays here, but when you're placing your orders, I mean, I know there's a certain amount where people have pre-ordered or just said like, hey, I want this. So you have some idea, but then how do you fill out the rest? I mean, what do you kind of base it on?
It's hard, and that's the trick between getting buried in dead stock and moving. And side note, the one good thing about a lot of these toys is there's not very often actual dead stock. You might sit on it for a year, but then a year later they might triple in price. So it's the opposite that most stores have with dead inventory, where you're like, I got to clear this out.
Yeah,
it's kind of stupid to clear it out. But as far as ordering goes, it's a constant learning curve. You being in the industry or being a fan of the properties helps, but that can also be blinding. Like, just because you like something doesn't mean everybody does. So you have to, still look at it through a customer's eyes. And for us, this year has been a big learning curve, because something we might have ordered 6 of or 12 of even six months ago, now doing a lot more conventions and, drumming up business and things like that, we might need 36 of them and 72 of them, and it's really hard. And, then it's a space issue, and like, shit, we got 90 White Rangers here, like we got to store them even if they sell pretty quick. So it's a constant juggling act. But you try, I've as a rule of thumb, I try to stay away from heavily ordering on video games that are new and certain movies or TV shows, because it's weird. So like Overwatch, I don't know if you're familiar with that game. It's a Blizzard game. It's a multiplayer shooter. Biggest thing in the world right now. And the pops, you could not get, even they've been out for 4 months and they're still like $15-$20 because you just can't get them. And as soon as they come in, they sell it. It's nuts. People are like, but then for every Overwatch, there's 20 games that people just don't care about. So it's really dangerous. And I'd prefer to err on the side of caution, because like for every one you sell a lot of, you're going to sit on the rest. And it's like that with TV shows too. Like, really weird thing, like Friends. Friends is a huge TV show, and they didn't sell that well. And I was like blown away by that. And but now, like Joey, we were like thinking about clearing them out a couple weeks ago. We're like, we need the space. And then, but we're all of a sudden people started asking for them. So like, all right. And now I just looked online. Joey's like $35, and like you couldn't get $6 for him 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
It's just so weird. It really is.
Yeah.
You'd never know.
That is funny. I mean, I guess I asked because I think about what it was like at alternate realities and ordering comics. I mean, Steve was
it's
the
very
one
similar.
Who did all the ordering, but it was always tricky because people had their pull lists, right? Mm-hmm. And ideally they would tell you when they wanted to add or drop a title, but
they don't.
That didn't always happen. No. So it's and it's really tough. And although I guess like you were saying, at least with the pops, they can live on, whereas with the comics it's like don't. If they don't sell within the first week or month,
they age like milk.
Yeah, that's it.
Pops are like wine right now.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, and that's interesting. I don't know the comics as well as a lot of other people, but I do notice that like the comic market seems to be a lot better lately. Whereas like new releases are becoming worth money right away, or you can't find stuff. So they seem to have figured that out somewhat. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not as in deep with that as I am with toys. But yeah, it is hard. And like you said, I try to talk to people and know like you're going to want 2 of these. This guy wants 2 of them, blah, blah, blah. So I calculate that up and then add X amount on top for custom random people. But it's hard, and you don't know. And then the guy comes in, he's like, oh, let me get one of every Suicide Squad, or let me get. And the worst is when it's like a really good customer, because like you want to give them, hook them up sometimes and things like that. But then like you don't have enough to sell the people that want them at full price, and it's hard. It's a weird industry.
Yeah. Do you have a master, just on a practical note, like a master list somewhere? Because I know like people must always be messaging you, texting you, Facebooking you.
Oh, like, my head. I will say I am like, I do write certain things down, and I set a lot of alarms for myself, which anybody who's around me will detest. My phone goes off constantly with this annoying ringtone. But for the most part, I'm really good at remembering things like that. Like, I got to order 10 of these for this guy, or blah, 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 blah. And I'm really good, like, even with the wall. Like, if we're at a convention, we got to restock the wall. That's the hardest part. Because like a lot of people have to go check if we have it out there and then go back to the box. And I literally can just, I don't know how, but I remember everything. I go in the stock room, I'm like, we need 2 of these, we need 1 of these, we don't have this out at all. And it helps dramatically. And that might be one of my secrets, and that's not something you can learn. I'm gifted with that, and I'm happy
that's really
though.
impressive.
But that's the only way I can multitask as much as I have to. So I'm glad that I have that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I was curious about, and before we sat down to record, we were talking about Alamo Drafthouse, the movie theater on Central Avenue in Yonkers. I just did the Rocky Marathon there.
That's awesome.
It was a fun day. I was curious, have you ever done or talked about doing some kind of cross-promotion initiative with them?
Like when they first opened, as a big movie fan, I was obviously ecstatic when I heard we were getting an Alamo, like a block from my house, nonetheless. So, when it first opened, but I think a lot of the people have changed over from then. But it's funny you say that. One of the guys that works with us, Jason, he was talking. He was like, "Oh, you should talk to him for Rogue One. Maybe you can like bring pops, or we can do some giveaways and things like." So that is something I want to talk to them about. Because it would be obviously an easy marriage, I haven't done it, but it is something I'd like to do, or even like. I was interested in like sponsor. Maybe we have like Undiscovered Realm Presents, and we do a screening of something, and we can do prizes. Things like that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. The guy that's there now seems much more. Not that they weren't open to it in the past, but I think whoever was there when it first opened just wasn't doing their job extremely well, which probably why they're not there anymore. But I don't. I can't say that for sure. But yeah, that would something we definitely want to do.
Yeah, because I thought of you, and especially when I was there for the Rocky thing. It's a great theater. I mean, for anyone who's listening to this who hasn't been to it, if there's one in your area, I mean, I would definitely recommend it. I mean, they're known for a few things. They serve you food and drinks during the movie, which is different than most theaters, and they do very strictly enforce their no talking or texting policy,
or showing up once it starts,
or showing up late, which prior to Alamo's, City Center in White Plains was my go-to theater, and it drove me nuts. It was just people coming in late and talking, and and
I can deal with it to some extent. But it is like now if you go to another theater, it's like it's you get spoiled.
Yeah,
put it that way.
But and I really saw this, especially with the Rocky one. And a few weeks earlier, I did the Superman the movie screening.
Oh, cool.
So they do these specialty screenings, which is great.
That's my favorite thing about them. The food is cool and all that, and I don't drink alcohol, so I don't care about that. But the specialty things are the best.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to see. So a couple years ago, I saw It's a Wonderful Life there. It's my favorite Christmas movie, and then now recently Superman and Rocky. So that's like my trifecta of
awesome.
movies that I want to see on the big screen.
Like a couple weeks, maybe a month ago, I saw Bill and Ted Bogus Journey back to back, and like. Those are 2 of my favorite movies of all time, and I never got to see them in the theaters as a kid, and like that's my favorite thing. Things that I absolutely love that came out before I was born, or I was too little, or I just didn't see them. It's great. And even some fun things, like they had Home Alone, which like probably my favorite Christmas movie, and like they had a unlimited pizza party, so they just had a ton of pizzas.
Oh, that's cool.
And then they had like Christmas cartoons 2 years ago maybe, and they had unlimited cereal at the front of the thing. You just got up. They had bowls. They had every cereal you can think of, milk, and you could just go refill it or whatever. And they showed all the Christmas episodes of like Real Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, and for like a couple hours, and it was so cool. Just things you're never going to see at any other movie theater, and that's their best thing for sure. I love.
Yeah. It's just like a different culture there, because there's this love of movies and movie history that you don't get at other theaters, and it's like at an institutional level as far as what they program, but then even just the people working there, like a lot of them genuinely seem excited about the movies.
Well, yeah. Like we were talking about before, when you talk to a huge collector, it's the same love.
Right.
You can it's tactile almost. You can sense it.
But yeah, you got to get in there with the pops. I think that's an
I'd be more than
there.
happy to work with them. Everybody petition them. No, I'm going to talk to them when I go see Rogue One.
Yeah.
And see.
Yeah. No, I think that would be awesome. I mean, and again,
Makes
especially, I do feel like and the audience that it attracts, I feel are more.
Yeah, so much overlap.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. And like, they obviously they're a mom and pop in a sense, but now they're kind of a chain, And but we, me in particular, and my partners and stuff too, we love working with other local businesses and all helping each other because it's rough out there. You know what I mean? So it just makes sense all around. So yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So as far as other local initiatives, so we mentioned that you're doing this Winter Wonderland event at Kensico Dam. So what's that about?
Okay,
Where can people find that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think, I was talking to them last week about like, just helping them social media wise and getting out there because it's a pretty cool event. Like, it's at the Kensico Dam, which, it's a big open park basically most of the year for people who aren't local. And, during the holidays, they have this thing called Winter Wonderland. And it has, like, a big Christmas tree. It's kind of like a mini Rockefeller Center, but with other events around it, too. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it's definitely awesome for, if you're on a date, maybe, or if you have kids, 100%. Because they have, like, a couple of the rides from the amusement park for the kids. They have pony rides, camel rides. This year, which is new, they have circus tent. Every hour on the hour they have a performance there. They have an ice skating rink, which is all this stuff is free with admission. Then they have like all food trucks from local restaurants and stuff around here, and it's all really good. I've been trying to have a different one each day at work, and everything's been delicious. And things like that. And then they have a couple vendors. There's not a lot, but this is the first year they really tried to do that. They also have Santa, so like if you come with your kid, you can get a free picture with Santa. Like it's good value. So we're vending there. We have a tent, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's outside, but every single thing has a different tent that's heated, so it's not so bad." I thought, my theory. I'm close with one of the people who runs it with their family, and so they approached us, and I thought it would be a good mix. Like I was like, either it's going to be bad for us or it's going to be great. There's going to be like no middle ground really. But it's a lot of families. It's a lot of kids. We sell moderately priced items that make great gifts, great last-minute presents, stocking stuffers, whatever. And it's in our backyard. It's like 10 minutes from our store. So even if we don't sell a million things, we can hand out cards to everybody that might not know we exist. We also run the Comic-Con at the county center. We can promote that. We let kids 10 and under in for free, and that's like the target demo over there. So, it's just just from an advertising standpoint, it made a lot of sense. But it's been really fun. It's so far so good. Every week as we get closer to Christmas, it runs the whole month until right after New Year's. It gets a little busier. So we're not even in the thick of it yet, and it's still been worthwhile for sure. So it's cool, and it's fun, to interact with kids and see them happy and stuff like that.
Right, that's neat. And it's evenings.
So right now it's open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It opens at 5 p.m. just when it gets dark. Okay. Because you need it because they have like the light show and the Christmas tree and stuff. But starting not this upcoming week that we're currently in. You're going to hear this in the future. But starting December 12th, I believe, it's open every day, Monday through Sunday, until New Year's. And I think it closes January 3rd. But it's closed on Christmas and Christmas Eve. Aside from that, every day. And so we'll see. It's going to, be better and better. Cool. And it's affected by the weather, too. So it's kind of interesting for us because usually it doesn't matter what the weather is outside. But, yeah.
Well, I haven't been there yet, but I do plan to. Although I have to say I had a very unpleasant experience at Kensico Dam.
Oh, really? I don't really go there that much. But.
So every year they do the... is it like the Westchester Magazine sponsors like the food and wine weekend or whatever, and they do the beer and burger bash at Kensico Dam, which in theory
sounds
is great.
Yeah.
I'm not really a drinker, but the burgers really appeal to me. So this was a few years ago, and this is when Steph and I were first dating, and it was good. It's a great place to go, and we got to try sliders from. Like 40 Westchester restaurants, which was great. Had so much fun. Got awful food poisoning. It was in the news. Like there were, I had a couple dozen
bad
cases.
Advertising.
Yeah, I mean it was.
Yeah, that lives with you. I don't eat Chinese food anymore after really bad food poisoning, and I loved Chinese food. So yeah, that will stick with you.
Yeah, I went back to eating burgers probably relatively quickly, but it was
you're lucky.
It was a little tough.
Yeah, no, that's the worst. But yeah, there's no food poisoning that I know of so far, and I've ate a lot of food there, so everything's been delicious.
No, that was just that other.
No,
event.
yeah, if you're cooking that many burgers really fast, you're primed for problems, I guess. Outdoors.
It broke my heart because it's like one of my favorite foods betrayed me.
Yeah, I know, right?
Rough.
General Sal betrayed me, so.
Yeah. I mean, if it had been something that I didn't normally eat, or I was just trying it for whatever, it wouldn't have been so bad. But that was really heartbreaking. So you got the Winter Wonderland thing going on. So hopefully people will. So this will be airing in just over a week, December 14th.
So you guys will still have plenty of time. And if you have kids, definitely come out. And if you don't have kids, it's a little less for you to do, but it's still fun, and it's not very expensive. It's like $10-12 or something like that. So, and just for the ice skating, if you went ice skating, it would cost you more than that. So come out, see the tree, have some fun, eat some good food.
Right. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about what you're doing right now. So we are sitting here.
A lot of things going on at once.
In what will be the new location of Undiscovered Realm. This is something that's interesting to me. So on this podcast, we've talked about opening a comic shop, running a comic shop, and closing a comic shop. Moving one is a little bit different. And that's something that's very interesting to me, because a number of us always used to talk about this with alternate realities, that it would be interesting to move to a different location. It's kind of like an opportunity for, a second first impression, right? And at AR in particular, so for the past few years, right next door, there's been a massage parlor.
Yeah.
And yes, that kind of massage parlor. I can't remember if we taltalked about this on the show the first season.
I don't think you did, and I was always curious about that. I meant to talk to you about that in general, like if there was any funny stories, because there has to be.
I hate to disappoint. So when I say, though, it is that kind of massage parlor, it's been raided and shut down, and then it reopens. There have been times, so there's a deli on the other side of where the store was, and there are tables and chairs outside. So a lot of times we'd get coffee or lunch, we'd be sitting outside, and you see guys go into the massage parlor and come out in like 5 minutes. So it's
5 minutes. They're just down to business. You just get the massage.
So I guess that's probably the extent of it.
That's funny though.
I wish I had a juicier story to tell.
I figured maybe you hear some stuff through the walls, or I don't know, like.
No, nothing like that. But it was just in it. But you would
crazy.
See these guys coming in and out so quickly. But before the massage parlor took over, the store was that space was vacant for a while, and we always talked about how it would be cool. To knock down the wall and expand the store, or on a probably more realistic level, just move the store.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys never did move, because your rent was crazy. Not to get into specifics, but you could have definitely been in a bigger spot for the same price. So I'm surprised you never. But it's a lot of work, especially if that store's packed to the gills. So
yes, I
can imagine. I wouldn't want to be the one to have to move that.
Yeah, but that was something that I think we were all always kind of excited about, that prospect. I don't think it was something that Steve ever seriously entertained. I think it was more us just being like, it'd be great. We could even just move next door, because it is that opportunity to really clean house and
it's a fresh start.
So how did this come about for you guys? How long have you been at
5 years?
5. Okay.
So our lease was coming up, and from the beginning, we had a lot of ideas that we always wanted to do, and but we had to work within the confines we had. We have X amount of space, we can do X amount of things. We always wanted to be able to do bigger tournaments, or do more video game tournaments, or be bigger into comics. You name it. Like we had big ideas from the beginning. But, we had to naturally do it. So we were constantly always talking about. I'd say from the moment we opened, we were always thinking about the next store. We knew that we were going to outgrow that very quickly. So it wasn't like a surprise thing. And I'm one of those people, we have a couple businesses. So whenever I drive up and down Central or wherever, I always look at stores and I picture what could be there and what would do well. And not even for myself, just in general. And so I always keep an eye out. And this place that we're in now, I always had my eye on it. It used to actually be a tattoo supply place, and I own a tattoo shop. So occasionally we'd need something, and I would come here, and I'm like, that's a pretty nice space, And it's only a block off Central Avenue. I can see it out the window right now, but it's slightly off the beaten path from Central Avenue, so the rents aren't as insane. So it's doable. So I noticed it was open, and the lease was, we're getting to the end of the year. So I was like, all right, now I can actually start looking at places, because before that it was pointless. Things changed, open, closed. Yeah. So anyway, came here. It was perfect size, perfect rent, and it was pretty quick. I'd say from the time we talked to the landlord to the time we were signing the lease, like a week and a half. And it's only a mile from our current location. So I did a lot of research. I did a big poll of our customers. And I knew no matter what, I didn't want to go too far from where we were, because for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Also, we were, a walk from the Hartsdale train station. We got a lot of people from New York City and from the Bronx and things like that. So I wanted to make sure we were still within distance of the bus and all that. So there were some rules that I was going by. And I did a poll, and 80% of our customer base was coming from north, from above us. So I was like, okay, so not that would exclude going down, but now we're a mile more north and we're closer to White Plains and we're right off the highway. And so it made sense on every level, and it just kind of happened. So that's why we did it, and now we're kind of in the process. Like, we're literally in an empty room right now with just some boxes, but we have about 3, the challenge of the move for us, I'd say, more than anything else, is that it's during December. So where any other time, we'd say, screw it, let's close for a week or two and just move everything, right? We can't do that. We're right on Central Avenue, the busiest area in the county probably, during the busiest shopping time of the year. We just can't. So we really need to stay fully stocked and open till like December 26th, because that's a huge shopping day too. So we're really going to have like a 5-day window to completely move stores while patching and painting the other one so it's back to, normal condition. And it's going to be interesting. And we have the holiday show at the Dam, and so we have basically the day after Christmas, we're moving. We're setting up. On New Year's Day, we should be open. We're throwing a huge free tournament for $500 in cash for Magic for everybody. And then the second, we have to pack up at the Dam. And the third, we drive 24 hours to New Orleans for a giant convention. So, yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah, you are one of the busiest people, I know, and I give you a lot of credit.
Thanks.
You work hard. You got a lot of, you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. This one is last year. I joke all the time, but last year we had our tattoo convention, New York Comic Con, and my wedding, all with 3 weeks back to back to back. And I was like, nothing's ever going to be more hectic than this for the rest of my life. And here we are. This might be the month that kills me finally, but I keep joking. But we're going to do it, and we're lucky that we have a lot of great friends, employees, and just customers. And that's another thing, going back to like alternate realities is case in point. It becomes a family, and we have all these people that are willing to help us, and that's the only reason we'd be able to do this in the time frame we have.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as what you're moving, I mean, it's the stock at this. It's primarily the pops.
Well,
right?
pops. We have a lot of cards. We have back stock and things like that. Display cases, tables, chairs.
Yeah.
So it's not like, a U-Haul or two, we're going to be able to move mostly everything because a lot of our stuff is small, but just a lot of it. But, it's moving the fixtures. And, like, one of the biggest challenges, like, just the slat wall, the stuff you put the shelves on. Like, because we can't take it off. We have to take everything down, take it off, move it over here. We had to paint over here first, then go over there at the same time, paint the walls and fix the holes. And so it's not like we can do things in a ideal order. Right. We're basically doing two things at once, so it's hard. So that the fixtures are the biggest problem, and we're on a second floor at our new location, so we have to go up the stairs.
It's just like Midtown Comics.
Yeah, there you go. It's very similar staircase. So we got to carry all this stuff up the stairs. So that's going to be the only headache. I'm not looking forward to moving the vending machine up the staircase. Other than that, I'm not really worried about it. Yeah, it's going to be fun, But I've done worse. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, again, we talked about it a lot on the show, but dismantling alternate realities and moving all that stuff out, it was such a beast of a project.
Yeah, and then on the reverse, you had to set it back up. But I am excited in a way because, like you said before, I'm very big on like setting things. I love when I walk into a room, whether it's someone's house or wherever, I'm always like, what could I do here? What could I do? So it's fun to sit, and I literally had to, we had to set up and make a blueprint. We had to do all this. So it's fun. But it's a lot of work. But it's going to be cool. I'm excited to be able to do all the things that we envisioned from the beginning.
Right.
It's like a new lease on life almost.
Yeah. So, I mean, what would you say? I mean, you were getting at this before, but I mean, what are some of the main things that you're looking to, improve or do differently?
Yeah, well, we'll be able to we'll have bigger tournaments for sure. Like, on a busy tournament day, we were maxed out. We'd have to cap tournaments at X amount of people. That's something we can at least double, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, this space, obviously, listeners can't see, but we'll take a picture. But I mean, it is massive.
Yeah, it's a little, it's at least double, plus a lot more storage. So without the storage, it's at least double our floor space that we have now, and probably a little bigger. So one thing we're putting a bunch of. We're going to have a whole lineup of TVs with Xboxes, PlayStations, GameCubes, Wiis, you name it. We're going to be having, you can come and, play video games hourly if you want, play online. We'll have tournaments, a lot of that stuff, which we couldn't really do before. And then we're going to be doing a lot more comics, weekly comics, which we didn't have space before, things like that. Just the things we already did bigger and better, and then the things we've always wanted to do from the start, like we were talking about. So the comics and the video games will be the biggest addition. We want to really expand on board gaming and other games that we might not have supported as much, tabletop gaming, things that we just didn't have the space for. I mean, that's really what it came down to.
Yeah. All right. Well, so come the new year, customers can find Undiscovered Realm at 66 Fulton Street.
Yeah, White Plains. 10606.
And new website too, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's another thing that we're doing at the same time. And it's pretty much done. I just haven't fully switched it over yet just because it's been so hectic. Really wanted to get it up for the holidays, obviously. But I figure new store, new website at the same time. It's good time to start it, I guess. It's really nice. We really made a big focus on pre-ordering like pops and things like that. Because like a lot of people, they show the photos months before they come out, and people just start searching for places to order them, and so by the time they're actually out and in hand, people have already allocated their money somewhere. And we're a lot cheaper. Like, we sell at $10. We're like, everybody else has been raising their prices like increasingly. GameStop is now 13 for regular pops. Hot Topic's 13, and we've stayed at 10. And for pre-orders, if you order before it comes out, we'll have it on release, and we're only doing for $8.99. That's one of the big things we're doing on our website. So
cool! It's
a really good feature, and the second something's announced, it'll be available on our site to order, and you can reserve it. It'll either come pick it up in the store, we'll ship it to you, whatever. So that's cool, and I'm excited for that. And we built it around that functionality, but it really is a really beautiful website. And even for cards and stuff, like the buy list is nice. We'll have that updated with things we're constantly looking to buy, and it's just going to be nice in general. Yep.
All right, cool. Well, hopefully listeners will check you guys out online as well.
It's undiscoveredrealm.com. But, in a couple weeks, the new site will be up. So, yeah, check it out. We appreciate it.
Now, speaking of projects of yours, because I'm fascinated to talk to you about this. A lot of the episodes that we've done in the past that I think people have really responded to are the ones that, kind of take you behind the scenes.
Sure.
So, obviously we talk so much about the running of a comic shop. You run a comic book convention.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's not anything I've ever had any part in. So I'm really curious to find out what goes into that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I forgot about these things, actually. This is another thing we're currently doing. So we're busy guys. But yeah, we're in the, I wouldn't say the thick of it, but we're in the, close to the thick of it right now. We're in the booking stage. We just redid the whole website for that as well. So that's up. The hardest part with conventions, it's a balancing act. So you have a lot of different people coming for very, very different reasons. Some conventions balance them well. Some cater to one niche over the other. You have the people that come for cosplay only.
Right.
You have the people that come to shop the vendors for toys. You have the people who come to comic vendors and dig through long boxes. You have the people who come for artists and Artist Alley. You have people who come just to meet comic creators. And then you have people that come only for celebrity guests. And so this is like 6-7 different fandoms all converging at once. And it's a very, very difficult balancing act. And one of the hardest things is, booking the guests. And it's a really tight rope to walk. Like, you want to have a good mix of things. But, you also have to be budget conscious and, figure you don't want, you can't put everything on the line and, one guy doesn't work out and then you're out of business, and it could be that simple. Some of these people command upwards of over $100,000 for just a weekend appearance,
So yeah, that's absolutely one of the things I want to get into, because you were telling me some of this, the last time we recorded after, and it was amazing. But I guess to just sort of, back it up first, what is the first step in this process? Like, you decide what makes you even want to take this on in the first place?
I don't know. I'm crazy. No, we
it's fantastic, but
it is
so
cool. I like
so
seeing
ambitious.
Things come together, and I really like our area, and for such a rich, diverse area right outside New York City, you have to go to the city for everything, and we have such a great area here. And there was part of it was a lack of things being here, but not even necessarily from a financial standpoint, like, oh, there's a hole, let's fill it. Just from being a fan and wanting to do these things myself. And at the end of the day, business is business, obviously, but everything I do, I try to do from the standpoint of a fan, and something that I would want to see. And I think that is part of the success. And I try to keep that, as much as I can. So we run the tattoo convention in the same building. So there's some segue there. So a lot of things learned from that obviously roll right over. But as much as there's a lot of the same, it's very different beasts at the same time. And so that's why we started it. As far as planning it, where to begin, you wanna be vendor friendly, and that going back to we see it on both sides of the coins. A lot of the people that put these shows on, they've either been doing it for so long that they were one of the originals, and it's just built up organically over time, and they're kind of foolproof, or a lot of people are like, oh, this looks popular, it's a cash grab. And those don't last. It's not authentic, and you can usually see it from the beginning. But unfortunately, there's been a rash of shows this year alone where everybody's deciding they can put on a show, and they're booking all these guests, and they're not doing it properly. Nobody's showing up. They're owing out money, and they're getting threatened by celebrities. It's crazy. It's been an insane year. I can tell you stories. But we travel the country, and we're vendors as well, so we try to see it from both sides. Like, what would make us happy if we were appearing at this convention, and what would we like to do as a promoter, and what would we like to see as a fan? So when we take that trifecta of things, I think that's one of the secrets, and that's where we try to base everything from the beginning. Getting into booking guests, it's crazy. Like, you could walk through the background of a scene, especially like horror guests. Some of these people, it's like killed by Jason #3 in the 7th Friday the 13th movie, and that guy's at a convention every weekend, and he's charged at least a couple grand, and like you really like bank off this. Like, I know in Hollywood it's a thing right now where people are literally telling their agents, get me into like some comic related or pop culture show, because you're set for your life. Like, these people make more money appearing at the convention for the weekend than they do filming the show, and it's crazy. So again, going back to budgeting, that's the hardest part, finding a good mix of things. You don't want to have all comic people, you don't want to have all TV people or movie people. You need a good mix and different genres. Somebody who cares about the Power Rangers might not care about Walking Dead, or might not care about this. So yeah, that's basically where you start, and then you decide how much money you're willing to put on the line or risk, and who you think would do well. And somebody who does well here might do awful in the middle of the country, and vice versa. So there's a lot of variables to it. I mean, if you have any specifics you're curious about, that'd probably ask.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I guess, just getting started. So, obviously you did it at the Westchester County Center, and that's where you do the tattoo convention as well. Was there ever any consideration of doing it elsewhere, or that was always going to be the place?
Well, a couple things. There's really nowhere else to do it around here of size. Like, there's a couple hotel things and that, but not at the scale. The county center, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a mid-sized place. It's much bigger than your average, like, hotel ballroom or something like that, but it's smaller than like your average giant convention center. So it has its unique issues, but it's also right in our backyard. We know the area, our customers are here, we're here, so we can target our advertising better, and it's our market. So that was one major plus. We don't have to travel. You save on some expenses there. So there wasn't really a thought of going anywhere else from the beginning. And there's not a lot of options, like I said. So that aside, but it's a great building for those reasons. The staff there is really great, and I can't see being anywhere else. It is possible to outgrow, but that's a good problem to have. If that ever happens, get your tickets early. I don't know what to tell you.
And then the timing of it. So you did it last year. Obviously, I was there. I'm trying to remember.
It was the very last day of April and the first day of May.
Okay.
And that was pretty much on purpose. There's so many events popping up now. We try to be conscious of that. You have to be conscious of that, because that could kill the show right off the top if you're competing with 10 other shows. And also for guests, if everybody's booking the same weekend, your possible roster gets a lot thinner. So we try to stay about 6 months away from New York Comic Con. Also, it's not the winter anymore. You're not going to get, a snowstorm coming through that's going to cause you to not have any attendance.
Like that event in Jersey that Stephen Amell and his crew
exactly.
put together
They
that
had
got
a blizzard.
snowed. Yeah,
exactly. And
although the people who were there got to hang out with him at the hotel all day, so
you got
that's
snowed
not
in
bad.
with them, which is cool. But from a promoter standpoint, that's scary stuff. They have insurance for that stuff. But that aside, so that was something we thought of. Also, we wanted like people to be able to come out in costume and not be freezing to death or have snow. So all these things came into account, and we decided on the April timeframe. For this year, we were downstairs. It's a 2-floor building. Downstairs a little smaller. We decided to start on the smaller side and organically grow it, instead of just forcing things. So it went well, and we decided to move upstairs this year. Now the upstairs is booked like every weekend, and the shows that are there, they're pretty much there at least once a year, the same time every year. And so there's not really a lot of gaps, like the people, unless the show doesn't come back. So we were trying and trying and trying. There was just no dates, and I'm like, all right. And then also our tattoo convention is in October, so 6 months from that, because it really is like 6 months of work before the convention. Like,
yeah, I can imagine.
Each one takes about 6 months. So as soon as that one ends, this one begins. So that was another reason. But that aside, we were like, all right, we were trying all year to get the dates right away. None of the dates we needed were available. We're working out because that building has the Knicks minor league team, and they have to hold like a 6-week block in case they make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, which they don't usually, then it's just open. But you can't plan around that because you won't know until right before. So for certain shows, reptile show, something like that, they can pop in and whatever. We can't do that. So I set a hard date. I was like, once the tattoo convention comes, if we don't have a date yet, we're just going to have to go back downstairs because we have 6 months at that point. We got to start this. The day before my cutoff in my head, they call me and they're like, hey, is we're April 8th and 9th this year. Is that weekend good for you? I'm like, that's literally what we asked you for 6 months ago. But yeah. And it just, somebody backed out and I don't know who, but I'm going to send them a fruit basket or something. But so it worked out and fate had it. So that's where we're at right now. So that's the date and the building.
Is it just a flat fee and you pay it up front? Or like,
no.
How does the pricing work?
This is going to be a
like
crash
this?
course. I'm going to help everybody else out there compete
See,
with me.
kids, if you want to make...
No, but I'm pretty
on the
open.
plus side, they won't be able to get a date at the county center,
you're
so
screwed.
it's going to have to be
Do it
elsewhere.
somewhere else. Yeah. I'm generally. I know a lot of people keep everything close to their chest, but I like to
say
talk.
whatever
No,
you're
that's
comfortable.
fine.
Yeah.
But I'm a big proponent of like, I think if we do something, we're going to do it well. So just because I tell you how to do it doesn't mean you're going to do it right. And we talk with other vendors, and we're all in the same boat. So if we help each other, great. But that being said, you basically book the building. And now every place is different. I will say the county center is on the upper end of expenses for sure. But, there's a lot of cool things that it comes with. Like, for New York Comic Con, when I need electric, it's $500 for the weekend. Just for electric. If I need to rent, I can't bring my own power strip. I got to rent one for $50. Just to get a phone line that isn't even fast Wi-Fi, just for dial-up for my credit card machine, it's almost $1,000. It's like $700 or something like that. Wi-Fi, $2,000 for the weekend.
Oh
so,
my God.
Yeah, now, and that's on the upper end of things. But even at smaller convention centers, a couple $100 for electric for the weekend on top of your booth fee. And
Jeez.
so the county center comes with Wi-Fi. It comes with parking for the vendors. It comes with electric, and they have the big screens in front, and so there's a lot of pluses. So the cost is somewhat offset by those things. So that's step one. You're going to rent the building. Now they charge you either if you're, I think, over X amount of ticket sales, they take a percentage of the sales. If you're under, then it's a flat fee. So whichever's the greater amount, they're obviously always making out in the end. They also charge on top of whatever your ticket price is a $3 fee, just like Ticketmaster would or something like that. So every ticket sold, they're also getting a percentage. So that's step one. Now, where the cost really adds up, the building fees kind of, it's not too bad. You're talking like tens and tens of thousands of dollars here. Don't get me wrong when I say not too bad, but the cost is the staff and the labor. Not even your own staff. You have to use all the building staff, and this is every convention center. I'm not just harping on the county center, but they bill everything high. So like if they're paying a guy $8 an hour, you're paying $30. So they're profiting on the hourly wages. You need to have county cops there, and it's an obscene amount of money for the hours. So that's where things start snowballing really, really, really fast. And then you have cleanup charges and energy charges and surcharges for this. If you need the meeting rooms, those aren't included. So for panels and things like that, I have to think in advance, like, are we going to need one panel room? Are we going to need two? Each one's a couple $1,000s for the day, and like that's, if you need to rent tables, one of the biggest expenses in the world is like you're spending a $10,000 to $20,000 on just pipe and drape, like the black curtains that go off the booths. I did the math the first year. I'm like, okay, I looked in China. I was like, I can buy this pipe and drape for $20,000, but I'm paying like $17,000 to rent it for the weekend. So like, why the hell am I not buying this? And I asked them, they're like, oh, no, you can't have your own pipe and drape because outside companies will pay the convention centers, however much money a year to be the only person that can do it. You can't bring in outside food. So like with the tattoo convention the first year, we had the Misfits play, and they have their rider that 10 Red Bulls and a fruit tray and this and like I could go to a store and buy a Red Bull for $1 something wholesale, but they're like $7 a can because you're paying the price you would if you went to the concession stand.
Yeah.
And just so things really get out of control fast. And the reason I say all this is because like when I'm at shows, I hear people bitching all the time, like, oh, this place is ripping us off and blah, blah. It's not the promoter. And sometimes it's not even the convention center. It's just how things are. And, and I always try to explain it to people or like, oh my God, like Wizard World is such a ripoff. They're charging us $100 for this signature. And it's like, no, that the celebrity is charging you that much money. You know, Wizard World's literally, or whatever convention, on the line. You know, they're the ones who are taking all the risk, you know. So that's step one. You rent the building out. You sign your contracts. You do this, that, and the other thing. You rent your tables. You know, everything is a charge. If you see a napkin there, you know, you're paying for it. So that's step one. Step two now is booking the guests and things like that. And like I said, you know, even your tiniest Z-list actors are at least a couple grand. And then you pay for their flights. You pay for their hotel. You need to have food in the green room for them. You pay them a per diem, so that, you know, $75 a day that they get just for food and travel. You need to pay for their parking at the airport, their baggage fees. You need to pay for their car service to and from the airport on both ends. Plus, you need to get them from the hotel to the venue every day. You know, so things add up really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, and specifically with respect to the guests, I mean, this part is especially fascinating. So when I mean, I guess where do you start as far as booking? I mean, is there a booking agency?
There's many,
Okay.
and there's a lot. So some people are exclusive to certain booking agents. Some people they work with, you know, any booking agent. You know, me or you could be a booking agent theoretically.
Yeah.
We find a convention that wants guests. We say, hey, I have X, Y, and Z. This is how much they cost, and that agent books them. You know, the convention covers the guarantee, which we'll get into in a second, and you know, the agent probably gets 5%, 10%, whatever it is. You know, they work that out with them. You know, I'm getting you 20 grand for the weekend. I get two grand, and blah blah blah. Now that's the other thing where they get you. So say you find booking agent A, and you book whoever through them. Now you need to fly a rep out and put them up in a hotel as well that sits with them and make sure, you know, everything goes well, and they're their agent essentially. So if you're booking from 10 different booking agents, you're not flying out and paying for a hotel for 10 different agents. So it's a lot cheaper to book multiple people from the same person.
Right.
So that's where they get you. They try and, sorry about that.
Okay.
They try to get you in, you know, locked in with them for a bunch of people. So that's step one. So you decide basically where your budget is. You know, if you decide you want to spend $5 grand or you want to spend 20 grand, or, you know, you figure that out. And then you try and, it's like a puzzle. You go, hey, how much is this person? Okay, well, they're 10 grand, you know, blah, blah, blah. You negotiate, you do whatever. Then you get this other one. So you try and get all the prices as much as you can.
Are they receptive to negotiation? Are they willing to work with you? I mean, it probably depends on who.
It really depends. And, you know, obviously the bigger the fish, the easier it is to do that. But, like, you know, if you're Wizard World and you're doing 20 shows, it's in their best interest to maybe take a little cut to do more shows with you. But if you're a small guy, you know, we're not the biggest show in the world, you know, you don't have as much negotiating power. But that being said, you know, if they normally get 10 and there's no one else knocking on the door and you want to give them 8, you know, $8 grand for a weekend of sitting at a table is better than not getting anything. So there's a little wiggle room, I guess. But so that's really it. It's like a puzzle. So you say, okay, I got all these offers now. This guy's 5, this guy's 7, this is this. You know, what's the best show I can put together within the budget range that I want to appear at? Now, this is where things get spicy. If, let's say, I don't know, X actor from The Walking Dead is $100,000 for the weekend. Okay.
We could probably guess which, or
you choose,
I mean, probably a few of them at this point.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's like the biggest show. So, but I'm not even using anybody specifically
right
here, and I'm not going to quote anybody's actual numbers, you know, for their privacy. But let's just say they're $100,000. Now, if they sell $100,000 worth of autographs, photos, whatever, over the course of the weekend, you don't have to pay them anything. You still are paying for their flight and their hotel and their food and all that stuff, no matter what. But that's covered. So in a perfect world, that happens and everything's great. If they make $200,000, they keep all of it. So there's no upside for you. But not having to pay is great because theoretically all these people came to see them, they bought a ticket. And that's what's in it for you.
Okay.
Plus it's, you know, promotion for the show and things like that. Now, a lot of times people don't cover, though. So it's not like everybody's a safe bet. Even some of these big stars, it's not a safe bet if there's a snowstorm or, you know, any number of things that affect people from coming. You know, at the end of the day, if they sell $5,000, you now owe them $95,000.
So just so I can keep this all straight.
Yeah.
So like, again, like all the travel fees and all of that you're paying no matter what. But they're...
Which is still pricey, you know.
Right. But just their fee for appearing at the convention.
It's a guarantee.
Gotcha.
You're guaranteeing them they're making at least $100,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now, again, if they don't make it, you pay the difference. And then on the flip side, they owe you. Now, if you pay them $95,000, they owe you $95,000 in autographs. So, hopefully, you're going to have a stack of autograph 8x10s, or if you have pop vinyls or whatever. So you can monetize that somewhat. But if this is a person that's doing this every weekend somewhere, and, there's every promoter in the country has $50,000 worth of autographs, this is why you see stuff on eBay, like $5 autograph, right. Whoever, so it can devalue things pretty quickly. So you don't necessarily get your money back. So that's another strategy you can use. You find people whose stuff might be worth more money, autograph-wise, so that if you do get hit, you at least have that to recoup. So yeah, that's one aspect of it. Now, on the comic side, this is the really annoying part now, personally. Comic creators, artists, blah, 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 not as many of them to go around. They tend to be booked very far in advance. A lot of them are kind of moody people or like recluses, and they don't want to do a lot of appearances. Some of them do appearances everywhere, but they are generally very hard to book because they're in demand and they're booked years in advance. They cost same type of thing where you're paying for travel and things like that, but their appearance fee is just a flat fee. If you pay them $5,000 to show up for the weekend or whatever number, and they sell 100,000, you still pay them the $5,000. Like there's no guarantee. And I think that's kind of like a holdover from like how it was from back in the day. They don't work in the same way. So it's kind of hard because that's just an expense. There is no recouping that money, and they don't owe you any signatures. They don't, and so that's why I say going back to balancing all these things is really hard because like you want to have a big cosplayer. Like some of these cosplayers, like I've heard, like the really big name, they might ask for a cut of the door because they're that big of a draw and they want 5% of the ticket sales, or like, so now you're dealing with that. You're paying X amount of money to the comic guys. You're, blah, blah, blah. And then the ones who need a vegan diet and the one who needs this and the one who has their dog that they need to bring with them. So you have to pay for the hotel and, it's, you name it, it gets really crazy really fast.
Jesus Christ, how do you make money off of something like this?
You hope for the best, I mean, that's the thing. In a perfect world, you throw an event, you have a good mix of all the things. People show up, they buy tickets, they buy autographs and photos from your guests, and you don't have to pay out, But you're really in great shape if every guest covers. It's just not going to happen, And that's another thing to think of. Like, so let's say you book one person from The Walking Dead. Now, if I get two people from The Walking Dead, man, people are really going to come out. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe now you get 20% more people, but now that money's split in half. So now instead of one person covering or making extra, they're both covering 70%. And those are things you need to think about. Also, like photo ops. Like, for instance, if you have, there's a convention coming up that has Abraham from The Walking Dead, Glenn from The Walking Dead, and Negan. Okay. Now, individually, maybe each photo is $75, $100, whatever. But if you get all three of them in a photo together, now this is a unique situation that you're not going to get at every show, and especially those three, that's relevant to the show. So it's a really cool photo to have. So now instead of if it was $300 for photos separately, you can charge $400 or whatever, and so that's all other things you have to plan around. Maybe having too many people is bad. Maybe having the right people is really good because it creates unique situations. If you have all 5 Power Rangers, where the hell are you getting that photo? Maybe you can see a Power Ranger at every convention around the country one at a time, but you're not getting a photo with all 5 of your childhood heroes, So a lot of variables, and we're just scratching the surface, believe me.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
And that's another thing, too, photo ops. Like, so, if they're just sitting at the table signing and things like that, now you schedule pro photo ops. Now you need the photographer, you need to allocate booth space, which you could be selling to vendors, and that's another thing, too. They take up space. So they're sitting in a booth that you sell for X amount of hundreds of dollars to a vendor. That's money that's also not getting recouped. But now photo ops, you have to schedule. So, like, now I got to figure out, all right, now I got to plan this panel that they're going to be at 2 o'clock, but then they need to take photos at 3 o'clock, and even more moving parts,
So, I mean, last year you obviously had a number of guests. James Marsters.
We had James Marsters from Buffy. We had Steve Cardenas, who was the Red Ranger, the second Red Ranger from the movies, and the second season and third season. And I think he was on a little after that, but I stopped watching. We had
Brian O'Halloran.
Dante from Clerks. We had some of the other actors from Clerks. We had who else did we have? We had a couple comic artists, and we had different things like that. And that was, for a first year show, it was pretty. We had Kurt Angle from WWF. We try to have a good mix of things. And one of the cool things that we did, which a lot of places don't do, like we had a Clerk screening, and then we had them do the Q. So instead of just having them do a panel, you could go upstairs. We had a movie theater projection. You could watch the movie and then talk to them about it afterwards, which is cool. That's one of the things we try to do is book unique things, that maybe you won't see at every convention. So we at least stand out in the sea,
You had the My Comic Shop History
Yeah,
podcast.
that was cool. No, yes, that was perfect. But things like that are really fun, And
oh man, I thank you again for the
of
opportunity.
course,
It was
man.
so
Can't
much
wait for
fun to
this year.
do. Yeah, well, it's so we can announce here now that My Comic Shop History will be doing another live episode at this year's convention.
yeah, and
Don't know exactly what it will be
not
yet,
but maybe we can do even something even bigger. We're on the main floor now, so we have a lot more space, and
cool.
We could do some cool stuff.
When am I doing it, by the way? Are we doing the 8th or the 9th, or are you still figuring
I don't
it
know.
out?
Whenever we'll talk about it.
Like I said, the 8th is my birthday, so I'm
well, if you want to
game.
do it on your birthday, obviously a Saturday is the bigger day. Sunday is cool too, though.
I'm game to do Saturday, but whatever makes the most
Yeah,
sense.
no.
But-
We'll figure it out. Again, that's one of the puzzle pieces is the panels.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. But no, I'm excited because last time around the show was off beforehand, so I didn't have an opportunity to say like, "Hey, like this is happening."
No,
so
it's cool.
Granted, we're still a ways away, but listeners, you'll have the opportunity to come out and see an episode live.
Awesome.
It was. I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit last time we recorded, but yeah, it was great. I mean, like I was actually impressed with the turnout. It was a solid audience.
It was good. I can't complain for the first year. It's hard. A lot of these shows just flop. Even like I see big shows that have been around for a couple of years and they just lose their footing or whatever, and it just flops, and it's an increasingly competitive field. So definitely happy with it. And like I said from the beginning, we wanted to grow organically. Right. We're not trying to do a 3-day show and book 20 guests, and it'll grow slowly. And one of the things that we were going back to us being vendors, we were very conscious of. We wanted our vendors to do very well because they're going to come back, they're going to tell other vendors, and that's the backbone of the show at the end of the day. And we were very conscious of having vendors that we liked. Right. That had good products for the most part. We see a lot of these people every weekend around the country. Not having too many of the same one because that's bad for everybody. As a person coming to buy stuff, you don't need 30 people selling the same item. They're not going to make money if 30 people are selling the same item, and we didn't place them next to each other. That's a lot of things. A lot of shows screw up. They'll have. I was at this awful convention like a month ago. I mean, like the worst thing ever. And maybe if there was 100 people there the whole weekend, it was maybe a miracle. And they had booked this guy selling energy drinks, Excess Energy, which is like a little lower brand, but they're known, you know what I mean? But then they had Monster as a sponsor 10 feet away giving away free Monster. So I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I even said to the promoter, I'm like, how could you in good conscience sell this guy a booth for $500, whatever it costs, and then give away his product, a more mainstream version of it 10 feet away.
That's not cool.
That's insane. That's what I mean when I say a cash grab. Guy only cares about getting sponsorship money, getting a booth sale. It doesn't matter how he does. But that's not a way to grow a show. Nobody in that room is ever coming back to that show. And for us, every vendor came up to like this. I've had people say like they've done big conventions and their profit margin at our show was the best they ever had. And that, to me, that's I'm very happy to hear that, and that means we did our job right. I did my job right. And they're going to be back. These people have been beating, going back to that, not knowing what the dates were for a little while, every couple of weeks, like, do you have the dates yet? Do you have the dates yet? And that's great because now last year where we had to like walk around, like, have you heard about Undiscovered Rome Comic-Con? Like, why are we better than all these other shows that are flopping? And we have to prove ourselves. And we did. And now they come back to us. So that's one thing off the plate, So every year, hopefully we just get bigger and bigger. And that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, like I said to you ahead of time, I'm trying to convince Jay Mizell, former podcast guest, everybody's favorite curmudgeon, to get to be a vendor at the show because it's really literally right in his backyard.
Yeah.
And again, he had the booth at the Portchester Flea Market for decades, and he held on to a lot of his stock. He's got movie posters, comics, trades, all that stuff.
Yeah. No, like I said, that is perfect. But that's that's the perfect thing. A lot of the expense for a vendor is traveling.
Yes,
your
right.
hotel costs, gas costs, tolls, staff. If you can travel 5 minutes and go home at the end of the night, like now you're talking. Yeah.
So I'm working on it. Hopefully we'll get Jay there. But so going back to the guests, so James Marsters. I mean, you don't need to tell me specifics of his, guarantee and all of that. But what was it? How did you land on him, and what was it like working with him and his people?
Well, from the beginning, I always have people in my head that I think would be good or I would like to see there. And again, I don't get hung up on just because I like them thinking everybody would. But, that's where I start. So now you find out who their agent is or whoever. And that's another whole beast is tracking down the agents. You
right.
know? There's certain services you can use and you can be a member of if you're in industries and things like that, which list things.
Like IMDb Pro, for example.
Yeah, IMDb Pro would be a good example of that. And each different industry, though, has a different thing. The comic artists don't have agents as much as they work for themselves, and sometimes they might be awful. You might email them, and 4 months later you get an email back. I'm not even exaggerating. So that's its own beast. But, all right, so going back to this. Now, say I wanted X person from this show, and I contact their agent. Either they're too much or they're not available, but they'll send you their roster. And you go through their roster, and you say, oh, they have this. Maybe this will work. And that's pretty much how that happened. I was like, we were booking another guest. Not that he was like second rate or anything like that, but it just wasn't on our radar. And then I was like, oh, that's a very good guest, blah, blah, blah. And it worked out. And so, that's where that happened. Another pitfall is if you book somebody 6 months out, and then all of a sudden they have a movie to film or they have to reshoot for a movie they already filmed or a TV show or promotional appearance, they can just drop out. That's why you see a lot of these conventions like a day before, like so-and-so can't make it. But sometimes they're contractually obligated, and there's nothing you can do about that. And that sucks because you've already wasted money spending, advertising. Yeah. And that's another problem that happens constantly. So, and, there's certain people that I really wanted last year. One of them, it was their son's birthday. So he's like, I can't come, If it was any other day, he would have been there. Or another one that I really wanted, they got picked up on a new TV show, and they had to start filming that week. And, there's things like that. One of the guests I was trying to book this year that we wanted last year, but they were already booked for another show. Then this year, they're contractually obligated. There's a big, big movie that they're in coming out during right before. So they have to do all promotion on TV shows, and that's... that times a million different things, that you also have to work around, which is a nightmare.
Right. Yeah, and I know it's tough because you don't always know who's gonna bring in the audience. I mean, like for Marsters in particular. I mean, again, it might be too tough to
very
quantify, but
audience.
I mean, to what extent do you, were you able to track, how many people he brought in? Or...
He was worth his weight in gold, I'd say. So there's a couple things you could look at, like. He was in a band and he performs solo. So we also, in addition to having him there, we were able to have him perform a concert, which is another thing you can promote and another thing for the fans to come for. So the more that the fans can come for, the more it's worthwhile for them, obviously, to spend their money and come out. He also is really good. Another thing that I look for, side note, is I see these people at a lot of shows throughout the year, like we said. I can see some people are just prima donnas or assholes, or they treat the staff badly. They're not very good to their fans. They're just like, where's my money? And then there's the people who you can tell really care. They spend a couple minutes talking to each person. That's another thing for me. It's not all about money. Like, I can tell and that brings a lot to the show too, because if you go to X show and William Shatner is an asshole to you, they're going to be like, I was at Wizard World and William Shatner was a real asshole. And they associate that with the show sometimes. And you have nothing, you can't control that. So he was really good in that aspect. He spent a lot of time with the fans. He had the concert. He was a very nice guy. And it was a crowd that you might not normally get. A lot of his fans are very intense. They're really, they love him, and they might have grown up being in love with him, and so they really want to see him. And there's a lot of women, obviously, which you might not get for something else, Right. So talking about diversifying again, that was something that really worked out.
Have you tried to get anyone from Smallville?
I haven't. I didn't watch the show. So first off, I'll say that I'm not as familiar with it. But I didn't watch Buffy really either. So it's not that's I don't know it. I'm not booking it. But I don't know if I saw anybody from any of the. I did hear. Was it Smallville? I was having a conversation with some other vendor. I don't know. I don't want to say it was Smallville because then somebody's going to think I'm talking about them, but it might have been. And like one of the main characters was just like a complete asshole or something like that.
No, it can't be Smallville. It can't.
Maybe it wasn't. I don't want to ruin anything. I feel like it was, but I might be wrong, so don't hold me to that. But yeah, I don't know it. I wouldn't be against it. Maybe for you. Well, you can do the podcast.
That would be amazing.
It'll make your life. No, but those are cool things too. But see, stuff like that, there's an overlap, and I'm all about that. So we'll see.
So now, as this show is shaping up, obviously we're still a few months away. But how many guests have been booked?
So far, I mean, there's a lot of stuff like on the back burner. That, like I said, that whole puzzle thing of getting offers and piecing it together. That's basically where we're at right now, and we'll continue to book until a couple weeks before the show. So it's a constantly evolving thing. If somebody's done filming early and they pop up and it's a good fit, then we'll have them there. But as of right now, we just have Billy the Blue Ranger.
That's right. That's been announced.
Yep. We're hopefully a couple days away from announcing somebody else from another thing that I really love, movie franchise. And but we'll constantly be announcing things, and especially with the comic side and things like that. That's something we want to do a little more. I know that the guests for like pop culture, it's kind of starting to become oversaturated with shows focusing primarily around that. Where the comic side started to get a little neglected, and I've noticed, that if you cater to that crowd a little more, they're underserved right now, and they'll definitely come out, whereas like these pop culture people, they're all over the country going. And the thing that kind of stinks with the people that come out just for the celebrity guests is they don't care about anything else. They're just there for that, and they don't really spend money with the vendors. And, again, I'm not saying it's all about the money, but at the end of the day, if they don't make money, they're not going to come back to the show, So they just come, they get their autograph, and they get the hell out of there. Whereas comic creators, people come out, they want to talk to them, they want to get their stuff signed.
They might want to go to a panel.
Yeah, exactly. They're more in the culture. It's not just like, oh, I'm meeting my idol or something like that. And obviously, we're not some mega show, so this isn't really a problem. But like when you have your people that cost, from the Avengers, $150, $200 for an autograph, or like $600 for a VIP ticket, like they don't have any money left to spend.
Yeah.
And I can't in good conscience ever see myself charging somebody $500. I paid it. I did it from Michael J. Fox, but like, where the hell are you meeting Michael J. Fox? And like, I have a flux capacitor replica signed by the entire cast, and he was what I was missing. And I would have probably paid $1,000, if I was able to do that, because that's a real once in a lifetime type opportunity. And so for some situations, I get it, but for others, I don't know. It just, I understand it's their time and they need to make their money, but like nobody thinks it's them charging this. It's always like, oh well, they're coming out for free and signing, and this horrible show is ripping us off for $200. And no, it's not that at all.
I remember a few years ago, Stallone was at New York Comic Con.
That's a case in point. Yeah,
and I think it was $500 for a photo.
Now he doesn't ever. That's the only show I've ever seen him do. Right. So that's kind of the Michael J. Fox thing. But in the same breath, that's whatever agency decided to bring him out was probably like, hey, we'll pay you $500,000 for you to come for a day. So you do the math, but
yeah, I mean, again, massive Stallone, massive Rocky fan. Again, I just spent all of Saturday at the Alamo Draft House watching all the movies, but that wasn't something that was really even attractive to me. Part of it is I don't actually really have a desire to meet him. Like the don't meet your heroes type thing.
Yeah, and I mean, Sylvester Stallone might be the nicest guy in the world. I have never met him. But he's not one of those people that I feel like you're going to get your picture, he's going to smile or whatever, and you're going to be on your way. And I mean, but that's the nature of the beast with most of these things, just because of a time constraint, Stan Lee might be the nicest guy in the world, but when you have 4,000 people waiting in line, you have your 3 seconds, and it's time for the next person to come along.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and I know, obviously people are very excited to do that, and I mean, that's awesome. It's just, that's something that, like, I've done it in the past. I remember the first San Diego Comic-Con that I went to. Yeah. I waited, for a really long time to meet Jeff Johns, the biggest DC writer, and now he's taken on a much larger role at the company. And yeah, you have a few seconds with him. It's like, hey, I really like your work. He signs your thing, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'd feel differently, I guess, if you had even just a few minutes with the person.
Yeah, and some people do take that time, and that's one of the things I really do like about the smaller shows, where like,
yes.
James Marsters, case in point, if he was at New York Comic Con and, there's, I don't know, 1,000 times as many people or however many times as many people, he can't do that. And, because now, yeah, maybe he, not that he doesn't want to, but he spends 2-3 minutes with each person. Half the people that want to meet him can't. And not even from a money standpoint. Again, like, now you have people that waited for hours and don't even get to meet him and they're disappointed. So you can't make everybody happy, and it's a weird balancing act. But at a smaller show, maybe he can spend 2-3 minutes talking to you, and you would get more of your money's worth. So, I find talking to people who come and shop with us at these shows, like, they're kind of burnt out on the mega cons, like, having to like refresh your page and stress the hell out to get New York Comic Con tickets, and then parking costs you $80 and getting down there, and they don't want to deal with it. They'd rather come to the small shows where you find your gems in the rough and you get to hang out with people and you're not crammed in an aisle. It doesn't take you an hour to walk down one aisle.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's nice to go to a convention and not be stressed out.
Yeah, but like these smaller shows, exactly. But these smaller shows are kind of going back to how New York Comic Con started. Not to say they'll ever be at that. Nothing will probably ever be at that level again. But that's what they started out to do, and they were the only ones, and it grew and grew and grew and grew. But I think that's what it's recapturing what people liked about it to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, and going back to the value of having comic book creators, I feel like with them, oftentimes you can get a little bit more time because they, again, depending on who it is.
Well, some
but,
people, you have like certain people, and I'm not going to name names, but I've seen there's some people that are at every show ever. And, not that they're not nice, but they're kind of just like, they're there for that paycheck. And, they're like, yeah, that's cool. And in their defense, even if you genuinely are appreciative of hearing, oh, I love your work, but after
a while,
100,000th time, like, what do you say? You smile politely, and but then there's people like we had Staranko out last year, and that guy's known for you're waiting in line, even if there's 5 people online, you're waiting an hour because he's telling you a story. But it was great because like when I talked to him about doing the show, I had to wait in line. Originally, I didn't talk to him via email. I actually saw him in person, and it was great. Like I loved listening to these stories. You're hearing like, and then I had to punch this other writer in the face. And he's talking about other well-known people, like, and it's like I caught him in the elevator and I punched him right in the face and blah blah. And it's great, So there's both sides to that too.
Yeah. Now again, I know we mentioned the more with the celebrity guests, their contracts, their writers.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to say of course. What belongs to which person, but what are some of the craziest or most unusual writers that you've encountered?
Well, so I've seen some wacky stuff online, like the Smoking Gun is a website where they post people's writers and stuff like that, and some of them are tongue in cheek, like, and then some are absolutely nuts. Like I haven't had like the I want a bowl of only orange M&Ms type thing or something like that, but like I had one band that was like, I need 2 gallons of whey protein, blah, 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 blah. And what you'll find too is, especially with bands more than like guests, depending on what day of the week it is, they ask for different things because they're using it as a way. Like if it's a Tuesday show, I need a bag of size 13 tube socks and blah, 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 because they use that to restock on everything. And like, so I'm trying to think of what the whey protein and all that workout stuff was probably the craziest one that I came across. But like, sometimes it'll be like, I need a deli spread with 7 pepperonis and 14 of them. And it's very specific. And I mean, I guess so you get what you're supposed to get, but it's just insane to read through these things. And then like a lot of venues, like they have a guy that's their job. Like you fulfill the rider request. So you're going, all right, I need 14 pepperonis and a cheese spread. I need 2 gallons of milk, 1 bottle of vodka, but that's really what it is. It gets crazy.
Have you ever thought about what your rider would be?
I have in the past, and nothing comes to mind right now. The sock thing, 100%, because there's nothing better than putting on a new pair of socks. So I'm like, all right, every week I get a new bag of socks. Like if it's Wednesday, you get Fruity Pebbles. If it's Thursday, you get Count Chocula. That's I would put stuff that I just legitimately need. Like I want a new hat or I don't know. You name it. But you can ask for anything you want. Like some of the high end people that are playing like the Garden or something like they're like, I need 5 dressing rooms, dressed in leopard print. 4 full-length mirrors, like only this type of light bulb, blah, blah, blah. And legitimately, like you contractually have to fulfill these things. It's fucking crazy. I need 6 white tigers or like it's like there's some crazy stuff out there. If you're ever bored, just go on the Smoking Gun and look at some of these riders, especially for really big touring acts or pop stars, like the divas and stuff like that. Oh my God, it's crazy.
It's amazing. And then so, I know you said in planning the show, you want to have a balance. You want to have a mix of different things.
Yeah.
Was there ever any thought of really zeroing in on one thing in particular, or would that be too risky?
No. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for doing that. Like I said before, some shows try to balance everything, and some shows are very niche shows.
Like I was thinking of, I've actually never been, but Heroes Con in North Carolina.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, it's very art-centric.
Yeah.
So, something like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think if you're going to do that, it needs to be something that you personally are very well versed in and know very like if we ran PopCon or something like obviously we know that very well and blah 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 blah. So you really need to be first and foremost a fan and well versed. So that's the thing. And you need to not have something else that's doing the same thing nearby, and so there's a lot to be said to be doing that. We didn't try to do that. I don't want to say we're trying to appeal to everybody as much as possible, but we don't want to like do too many things and not do any of them well. So if we're going to do 5 different things, we want to do 5 different things well, and that's the hard part. But by default, there's always going to be something that you lean more towards, I think. Like, I think one of our strong points going forward will hopefully be a diverse vendor group or things like that, instead of just accepting anybody. Case in point, like last year, there was a point. We sold out of booths, before the show, but, a couple of weeks, months, or whatever it was before, we say we had 20 booths. I'm just making numbers up here, but say we had 20 booths left, and we already had 3 people selling T-shirts. We had probably 10 different people that wanted to sell T-shirts, so money in hand for the booth. Now, it's our first year show. We don't know if we're going to sell those 20 booths, and that's the backbone of recouping money and stuff like that. But we were like, no, not because we don't want you there, but like, what's the point? You're not going to do well. These people that already signed up and came on board early, we want to be loyal to them. And that's something that a lot of shows do not do. And, even the big shows now, like I'm in a lot of vendor groups where they rate shows and things like that. And it's helpful. And we talk to each other. They might have been doing a show for 10 years, and now they're all of a sudden like, oh, sorry, we don't have space for you. And it's a hard nut to crack, because part of me is like, oh, that's bullshit. I'm a very loyal person, and if somebody helped me out, I'm there with them till the end of time. But in another way, if you have your show every year and it's the same 100 vendors, what sense is there to come back? Now, a lot of vendors might update their thing, but so that's another hard balancing act.
That's definitely.
But I had to forget what the beginning question
No,
was.
that's okay.
Focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be one of our strong points. And then we'll fill everything in as we can. There might be a year where there's just no good media guests to get, or something just doesn't fit the budget. And so it's always going to be in flux,
Right. And then as far as the marketing side of it, what sort of initiatives either did you undertake last year or do you plan to do
that's
this
another
year?
very big expense. And I'll use the tattoo convention as I have a good story for that. Not a good story, but case to prove what I'm talking about. We traditionally use traditional media like bus posters or mall posters, whatever. Commercial, whatever it is. And, we spend a significant amount of money on that stuff. And it's really hard to gauge what kind of results you're getting from that. Who's seeing it, what the demo is, So after like a couple years of doing this, I had one of the guys that works with us. I made a poll, like an app for the poll on an iPad. And I was like, all right, your job this weekend is to stand at the door as people walk in. Excuse me. As people walk in, ask them how they heard about us. Did you see this? Did you see that? A quick thing, because you only have a couple seconds to interact with the person. But the overwhelming majority was Instagram. Like, I'd say 80% now. Instagram was the only thing on there that was free. So I'm like, what the fuck am I spending $20,000 on advertising? But, obviously the other things still have value, don't get me wrong. But I'm like, okay. So the year after that, Facebook and Instagram really got their act together. They're constantly evolving with their ads. And it's a really underserved utility, because you can really not only focus in on things like, I want white men from 18 to 40 that live in this area, blah, 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 or I want women that live here, whatever. You can focus on whatever the hell you want, who like these 5 things on Facebook and have kids, and, it's crazy. But in real time, you can see results. As people are liking, commenting, sharing. This is Bob from West Nyack, who is 18 years old and likes these things and has no kids. And you can start to see trends. And like, now I can spend the same amount of money and reach people that are in Massachusetts, and they're not going to see the mall poster in the Galleria in Massachusetts. And so it's a constantly evolving thing. But social media, if you rely on it too much, is also a problem. But I think that you can get 10 times the reach for 10 times less the money, and that's a large chunk of it these days. But it's constantly evolving. Like, what you could do on Instagram today versus what you could do 6 months ago is worlds apart. And who knows what it'll be by the time the show happens. So, that's kind of where our focus is. But every show is unique in that. Like, if I said this was gangbusters for us and it delivered us 10,000 people or something like that, and I gave it to you and you're running a different show, you might get nothing off of it. Every market's different. Every show is different. Your user base is different. Like, we're in Westchester County. What works advertising here might not work in Georgia,
Right.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's something that's a big piece of my day job at the law school is marketing. And then with my various podcasts and documentary projects, that's, always something I'm trying to figure out as well. It's like, what's the best way to reach people and get them to take action?
Well, that's
is
the
really the hard part.
But I mean, as a marketer, you have your like standard stuff. Like, all right, I'm going to make 5 variations. I can't speak. 5 variations of this post, and maybe each one has a different picture or a slightly different picture or wording. And one sometimes, for no reason at all, it just clicks with people more. And this one might get 20 times the amount of attention. So then you shift your marketing to that. And there is no, at the end of the day, there's really no rhyme or reason to it. You're really throwing mud at the wall and hoping something sticks. But you learn, and you learn what works for you.
Yeah. Well, I wish you lots of luck with
Thanks,
this year's
thanks,
show. I'm
yeah.
excited to be a part of it again.
Thanks. Yeah, we're happy to have you.
And best of luck with the Winter Wonderland and the move.
Yeah,
all of it.
Tons of stuff. Yeah, it's a crazy month, but it's going to be awesome on the other side of it. Like when it's mid-January,
Yeah.
and hopefully no problems have arisen. It'll be nice to look back, and then we can focus fully on the convention because that's full steam ahead from there. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's stressful to have all those balls in the air, but I think it's a good thing to be
it's
busy and
stressful
to have
and
that
fulfilling
momentum.
at the same time. There's days where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And then there's days where I see 20 people who are friends because they met at our store and they're all hanging out together. And I don't want to get like sentimental and cheesy, but that means a lot. And so it is fulfilling. So it's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say? Anything we didn't get to that we should have?
I don't know. Unless you have a question. We got to a lot.
No. Actually, one thing I was thinking, and I don't ask this to be difficult, but I'm just curious, like, because with the Pops in particular, like I know now as you're moving to the new store, you're going to be getting into comics and things like that. And I know from our previous discussions that neither one of us considers Pops, a bubble that's going to burst anytime soon.
Yep.
But is there any concern about, because I know it is such a big part of what you do, is there any concern about relying on it too much?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't want to say that it's our crutch or something like that, because when we started, we didn't even have any Pops. And, I don't want to say that that's all we've leaned on. It's a big part of our business model, but it's constantly in flux, and I try to diversify as much as possible. If you look at us from an outsider perspective, you might be like, oh, they only sell Pop. You see us at convention, things like that. I mean, a large chunk of 90% of our in-store customers are card game players and things like that. So,
I think part of the reason I ask that is because gaming is one thing I just never got in, and for all my years at Alternate Realities, and we used to do the Magic Tour.
I used to play there, actually, yeah.
I never got into it. D&D, Hero, if anything
HeroClix
were to have
cool.
grabbed me, I feel like it would have been HeroClix, and it didn't. So I guess for me, looking in, it's I zero in on the Pops. That's what I'm most interested in.
And very, you have good reason to, because again, from an outside, if you're not in the store day to day, you don't see that aspect of it. So I mean, we do diversify a little bit, and I'm very conscious of these things. Like I was talking about before with the high end Pops. I don't think they're going to bottom out. I'm not going to be like, I'm not selling these anymore. I don't want to buy them from people or whatever. But I need to be a little more realistic with it, and you just have to stay ahead of the curve. That's really what it comes down to, and diversify, and that's really all you can do. At the end of the day, the collectibles industry, it's been around forever, and there's going to be ebbs and flows, and there's going to be trends, and you just hopefully stay one step ahead. And I think being you love comics and the market somewhat, so you can kind of see the writing on the wall with certain things. And same thing with me. If I was just a guy who was like, I'm opening it. We joke around all the time because you call our not our distributor, but a distributor on the phone. They're like, oh, we got these new Pokemans. The kids are all about it, And the guy, they don't know what the hell they're selling. They just know that I'm ordering it. And if you're that guy, you might get caught with your pants down, But if you're in and you love the product, you should know it well enough to see the writing on the wall or move ahead, or maybe this new thing that's coming out you buy. There's going to be something that catches you off guard every year, like these Hatchimals that I don't know if you know those things. It's like this year's crazy Tickle Me Elmo or Furby. It's It's literally a Furby that hatches out of an egg that you have to get it to hatch. But I mean, people are getting fistfights for them, and they're going for $300 on eBay, and they're $50 in the store, and you can't see that coming. That's half of that's just manufactured hype, but. We try our best, and at the end of the day, it works great. If it doesn't, we can't say we didn't try.
That's right. Well, you've been doing a great job so far, and I said, I wish you lots of luck with everything moving forward. And thank you for coming back on the show. And
thanks. I really, truly do like doing this, and it's nice to forcibly stay off my phone and not have to work or do anything for a couple hours and talk. I really do enjoy it. So thanks for having us.
Cool. No, my pleasure. I haven't done this for a few months, so it's a couple months, and it's cool for me too.
Yes, good for everybody.
It's therapeutic.
Yeah, it is. I really do enjoy it. So anytime, we're here.
Awesome. And to our listeners, we wish you a very happy holiday season, and be sure to get some Pops as stocking stuffers.
Yeah, we have plenty in stock. Come see us before the year's up, and we're at 44 North Central Avenue if you're local in Hartsdale, and again, we'll be at 66 Fulton Street in White Plains after the New Year, and we're always available on undiscoveredrealm.com.
be sure to come to Undiscovered Realm Comic-Con in April and watch the podcast
April 8th
live.
and 9th.
That's
yeah,
right.
come see the podcast for sure.
And once again, happy holidays. Thanks for listening. And as always, don't be a flat squirrel. Don't go anywhere. The second half of our holiday double feature starts in just a minute. Are you worried about the lack of fresh content from Flat Squirrel Productions while the podcast is on hiatus? I recently released my new documentary, Wacky Man, The Rise of a Puppeteer, on Vimeo. If you enjoy this show and would like to support it in a very tangible way, please rent or buy the film today. It's a very human story of passion and perseverance, and I think you'll enjoy it. You can find the film at vimeo.com/ondemand/wackyman. If you enter the code MyComicShopHistory, one word, all lowercase, you'll save 25% on your rental or purchase. This is limited to the first 100 users, so don't wait. As a wise man once said, hesitation kills. Sincerely, I really appreciate your support, and I hope that you will check out and enjoy the documentary. All right, now back to the show. Welcome to My Comic Shop History. This is the Season 2 Christmas special, and I am your host, Anthony Desiato. This is quite special indeed. I am recording at 6 Hilltop Road in Mendham, New Jersey, at a vintage toy and collectible store called, appropriately enough, It's Vintage. And I'm joined here today by a new voice to the show. Please welcome Alan Baus.
Hi, how you doing?
So, Alan, you are the owner of It's Vintage.
I am.
And you know, I love doing this podcast and I love this medium that we're working in. But every now and then I do feel a little bit limited by the fact that this is strictly an auditory medium. Because I'm looking around your store here and I don't know that words alone can do it justice. I mean, we'll talk a lot about your shop over the next hour or so, but I mean, it is a cornucopia of vintage toys and other collectibles, organized and preserved in their original packaging, you know, just meticulously, and it's quite a sight to behold. So, I mean, congratulations on what's really an awesome store.
Thank you.
So there's so much stuff that I want to get into with you, but just to kind of catch you and the listeners up, sort of how we got here. So this show, My Comic Shop History, I run this podcast like a television series, so we do seasons. Thus far, each season has been 12 episodes and a Christmas special. And the first season of the show focused on the closing of my local comic book store, Alternate Realities. And then this season, we shifted gears a bit and we got into the world of collecting. And we addressed a lot of different issues that collectors face. But one thing that I didn't accomplish in the regular season was I really wanted to talk to someone who shares my love of the Kenner Superpowers line of action figures. And I've talked about this on the show, but the Kenner Superpowers Superman figure, it really was my first introduction to the character and collectibles. The Death of Superman comic got me into that world, but it was really that action figure that kicked things off. And throughout the season, you know, I mentioned it, I put the call out on the show a couple of times if anyone was out there and wanted to come on and talk about it. I joined and posted in a couple of different Facebook groups devoted to the Kenner line. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to some people on there, and nothing ever came together.
Wow.
And then here we are, our last opportunity this season, our holiday episode, and it was kind of a little Christmas miracle. So a few weeks ago, it was Thanksgiving weekend and Sunday night, and my wife decided to turn in a little early, and I figured I'll stay up. So I was searching the channel guide to see what was on, and I saw that The Honeymooners was playing. I am an immense Honeymooners fan. I've actually toyed with the idea of doing a Honeymooners podcast.
That would be cool.
And I think that might happen at some point. But I love The Honeymooners. Anyone out there who's not familiar with it, please do yourself a favor. The New York Pick stage, they usually do the New Year's Eve marathon.
Yeah.
So really do yourself a favor and check it out. But I switched to the channel that The Honeymooners was on. And again, it was just, right place, right time. So I go to the channel and I see a commercial for your store, which is very unusual. You don't often see commercials for any kind of comic or collectible shop. So I'm seeing all of these images, and it absolutely captured my attention. And especially, in particular, you had me from the start, but towards the end, the commercial specifically called out the Superpowers figures. Yeah. And I was like, this is meant to be. So I was able to get in touch with you, and we chatted, and here we are.
You're the exact person that I wanted to grab. That's why I wanted to air it on that station. Hopefully somebody would see it, and here we are. So Superpowers. That's my favorite line for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So again, this show is called My Comic Shop History. It's become somewhat of a tradition when I have someone new on the show. The first question I usually ask is, what is your comic shop history? Where did this start for you?
Well, I played with the toys when I was a kid, and I had a huge break. I was into sports, so I wasn't collecting. And about 25 years old, I walked into a vintage toy store, and there was a DC Superheroes Flash figure on the wall, and I overpaid for it, but couldn't have been happier. So I got home, I looked at it for the rest of the night, and I was back at the shop in the morning and buying as many as he had. And it was probably an 8-year period where I was like wildfire. I couldn't stop collecting. I was grabbing everything that I could. But it was really DC Direct that ignited it, along with the superpowers. And for me, superpowers is really what fueled the whole thing. Once I rediscovered the superpowers line, I was off and running. So
just going back though to that first introduction when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember where you were when you got your first collectible?
I do. Kmart. I walked in and I bought a Star Wars Gamorrean Guard with my own money, and I actually remember standing out in the checkout line with it and dying to open it up before I even checked out with it. But I walked home with it in my hand, and I can't tell you what happened to it after I got home. But that was the first figure that I bought with my own money. And I do remember having a lot of He-Man figures. He-Man was Masters of the Universe. That's what we played with, my brother and I. We were always into He-Man and Skeletor, for sure. So that was sort of what started it.
So as a kid, buying and getting these toys, and you played with them, right? So they weren't, because obviously everything here in the store is in its original packaging. Yeah. But as a kid, you would open things and play with them.
Yes, none of these toys are from my childhood. I started collecting at 25, and everything here came after that. Anything that I had before that, couldn't tell you where it is.
Gotcha. So, and were you from this area originally? Where did you grow up?
No, I grew up in Rahway. Moved out of Rahway when I was probably about 12, and made my way up here.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but I have such fond memories of playing with toys as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really the beginning. I mean, everything that I do now, I mean, the films that I've made and hosting this podcast, it's all telling stories. And that's really what I did with those figures. I mean, I don't know if your experience was similar. I only, because I was thinking about this in advance of today, I wish I could remember the storylines that I came up with, or that I had written them down or something, because they were involved.
Absolutely. The imagination, I mean, we talk about it all the time, the imagination that we had as kids. I mean, I feel like now with the video games that are out, it's almost like the imagination is being given to the kids. Somebody else's imagination is being given to the kids, We used to go outside for hours with the figures, with the cars, and make up our own stories, have a great time, and never with the video games.
So then sort of what was the next step? I assume you fell out of it at some point?
Well, I got into sports.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I got into baseball, and baseball took up all of my time. Baseball camp, baseball teams, and then high school, and before you know it, it was college, and it really was... I worked in a kitchen one summer, and I worked with a guy who collected Star Wars figures, and collected them with as much passion as I guess I collect superpowers now. He really introduced me to the best way to collect, the best way to preserve, the best way to go out and look for the variants, and he really turned me on to it. And I didn't understand why he wasn't opening them up. I didn't understand why he was putting them in UV bags, and I didn't understand any of it until he showed me his collection. And that day that I walked into the vintage store and picked up that Flash was basically the start of it for me.
So did he tell you about the store? Did he bring you there?
No, he didn't. I found the store just by chance. I was walking by. It was a huge vintage store. It wasn't just a toy store, so you had to walk in and sort of rip through stuff. And but once you did, you noticed that the guy who owned the store definitely had some cool stuff. A lot of Ben Cooper Halloween costumes and a lot of original Star Wars, blue snaggletooth in the back of the case, stuff that not anybody would just notice. And he had enough superpowers there to keep me coming back. And I was there probably twice a week for 3 years for sure.
And that started when you were in your mid-20s?
Yeah, about 25. Mm-hmm.
So, and then from there, was that it for you?
Oh, yeah.
You're down the rabbit hole?
I was gone. Anything I could find, anything I could trade for. I had, before I opened the store, I had probably close to 300 or 400 loose Superpowers figures.
Wow.
And I still have my carded collection, which is about 160 carded.
So now the line itself, I know they went through a few different series, but they only made
30,
you know the exact number.
Yeah, 33, 34 with the Riddler. I believe that's what it is. Yeah, I have multiples of everybody, and will still continue to do it. If it comes across me, then it's going to go in my collection. I mean, I do try to collect as many of the foreign carded figures that I can. I'll always add as many cyborgs as I can. Shazams. I probably have 9 Shazams in my collection now.
But so when you go to that toy store for the first time and you get the Superpowers Flash, I mean, what is it? I guess this is like that X factor for any collector, because I think we all have that moment where something just really captures us and
Right.
it sets us on a path. I mean, can you pinpoint what it was that did it for you?
Absolutely. The colors, first of all. The card design on the Superpowers is amazing. It grabs you. It's perfect. The artwork is perfect for me. The figures themselves, what I love most about them is the simplistic accuracy of the figure. It's not over detailed. It doesn't have a ton of accessories. But it still captures the essence of the character, especially the characters that we grew up with the Superpowers cartoon and the Super Friends. That's really what does it for me. To be able to do that without over detailing it, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in trying to find someone to talk about this, I joined a lot of the fan groups online, and I mean that even to this day, all these decades later, they still have such a following. And it is funny when you compare them with the figures of today, which are super detailed and they're very impressive. But there is something to those Superpowers figures, the simplicity, but while still capturing the character.
Yeah, and I think that for me, collecting them in the package as well. Keeping the package in the best condition that I can. Those figures were meant to be played with. They were meant to be opened. The card stocks are not very sturdy. The gauge plastic is not meant to last 30 or 40 years without blister cracks and dents. And some of the toys that come out today, the McFarlanes, the Marvel Legends, I mean, that stuff is... I mean, you need a good pair of scissors to open up some of that stuff.
Right, yeah.
So having one of those items for 30 years it's not really a huge feat as far as collecting goes. So having a Superpowers figure from when it came out, having it in mint condition now, to me, I mean, you're looking at 30 years of having a packaged figure that wasn't meant to be packaged. So
yeah, I think that was something you meant, because in my preparation for this, I came across an interview you did with the local patch, and I think that was something that you mentioned in it, that those figures, they weren't meant to be preserved in that way. So to find something that's still intact like that is so rare.
Yeah.
So I know, obviously, you said you have multiples of each of these. Which one do you have the most of?
Shazam's my guy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the one that started it all. Saturday mornings, I watched the TV show. The colors, the story. It was always Shazam. Shazam and Superman for sure. But the Shazam figure was definitely it for me. And when I first started collecting, it's just funny that it turns out it was one of the hardest ones to get. And I was always on the hunt for Shazam. So even now, I'm still adding them. If I find him, he's going in my collection. I even have a hard time selling him out of the store loose. It's hard to get rid of Shazam in any form.
Wow. So is there no end? Like, is there any number that would be, you say, okay, that's enough?
No.
But now, do you seek them out, or is it just whatever you happen to come across?
I don't seek them out like I used to. Sometimes somebody will walk in the store with one, looking to trade, looking to sell a collection. If I'm in the position to, I'll buy it and I'll add it to my collection. I'll troll online looking for something. You bump into something every now and then. But no, there's no number. I'll keep going.
Well, you would know much better than I would, because I really only have a couple of these. I love them, but I kind of, the sense that I get is one of the things that maybe is appealing about the Superpowers line. It's rare enough that you probably have to do some hunting to find them, but not so rare that it's too hard or too expensive, right? I feel like it's sort of that sweet spot for a collector.
Yeah, well, eBay makes things a lot different. You can almost find anything on eBay nowadays. I think when you get to the level, the number that I'm at, you start to look for the more rare items or the foreign carded items. And there are some collectors out there that are super impressive. Since I've opened up the store and I've started to look for more figures, I've come across some other collectors whose collections are very impressive. I will keep adding as many as I can to my collection, but there are collectors out there who will, they're trying to get every single one that was released. They're trying to the different card one, the different countries,
Right.
And that's cool. Gulliver, Super Amigos, and I will add those to my collection as well. But there are definitely some very, very nice collections out there for sure.
A few years ago, I was getting nostalgic, so I went on eBay and I purchased a mint in package Superman. It was, again, you'd be the person to ask. I think it was the Canadian version because it was sort of the half packaging, the slim.
Oh, the slim
case.
card, sure, yeah.
So I still have that. And then recently, a friend of mine, he had a loose Superman that he was going to throw out. He said, "Unless you want it," I was like, "Sure, I'll take it." So I have that, no cape and no package, but that's out there as well. And then I was at San Diego Comic-Con over the summer, and I talked about this on the show. It was so cool. I found this vendor. I was just kind of tucked away amidst everything else on that huge convention floor, but he had a bunch of the loose Superpowers.
Right.
If I had found him earlier in the weekend, I think he had more that he sold by the time I got there. But I did pick up. It was loose, but the Battlesuit Lex.
Okay, cool.
Because I figure I have Superman. I should get the Lex as well. I haven't pulled the trigger on Clark Kent. That's going to be next because I feel like I need to have that.
Absolutely, he's a great figure. For sure.
That was the mail away one.
Yes, that was the mail away one. I think that once you get into collecting and you start to get to a certain number, you start to realize how many variations there really are. For instance, some of the cards have the cape offer, some of the cards have the mail away offer, and collectors, they want each version. So, I mean, it really can just keep going on and on. Then you go into the foreign, you go into the slim cards. The slim cards are great. I mean, I definitely have a complete set of them in my collection. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the slim cards were released in gas stations in Canada.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what I read when I was researching that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I don't know. I mean, for at least a little while, the temptation was there to try to get a full set of these.
Right.
You have a bunch of them loose here. I suspect I'll probably be buying some before I leave today. But, I mean, I didn't get that far with it. I was happy, mainly having the Superman one because that's the one that really has the, the attachment for me.
It's a great figure.
But yeah, I mean, it's a terrific line. So they did there were three series.
Three
is that
series, yeah.
correct? There were plans for a fourth?
The plans for a fourth. Designs are out there. Even Lee's Toy Review put out some pretty nice photos and of projected figures and play sets and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I know there's some man-bat stuff floating out there, torsos and there's some pretty cool specs and designs that are floating around. So yeah, I mean, it would have been great. It would have been great if they kept going, because I could tell you that it's one of the things that drives my customs actually is the amount of things that are left to be desired.
What are some of the characters you wish they had gotten to?
A good Batgirl would have been nice. A nice Lois Lane would have been cool.
Yeah, I mean, again, as a huge Superman fan, it drives me nuts that there isn't more Lois Lane stuff.
Right, which is why I try to customize her as much as I can. A Bizarro figure would have been great. A Scarecrow, Solomon Grundy, Grodd. Basically the Legion of Doom. It would have been cool if they had gotten around to a little bit more into the Legion of Doom. That would have been cool. A nice Sinestro. The counterparts.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
So at home, you have all of all of the carded ones are at home, and the loose ones you sell in the store.
The loose ones I sell in the store. The customs I sell in the store. I do a lot of commissioned customs. Yeah.
Are there any circumstances under which you'd sell the carded ones, or that's an absolute no go?
It's funny. Some of my customers know that I collect, and they know that I have multiples of certain characters, or all characters actually. But when they know that I have 9 Shazams and they're looking for a Shazam, they're definitely not afraid to ask me if I would part, and I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Well, again, this might be too tough to answer, but is there? What is it that keeps you from?
I open the store with my collection, so everything that's in here is from my personal collection. I think that when I did that, I decided to keep the one thing that I had the most emotional attachment to, and it was definitely the superpowers. So I say, that's what I'm going to keep, and everything else is going to go. I mean, I have to make room, so I'm basically just replacing all of the space I was using for this with superpowers figures.
Speaking of space, so for the hundreds that you have at home, do you display them, and how do you display them?
Yeah, what I do is I take a hard plastic comic book slip, and I slice it so I could slide the card in. It leaves the blister exposed, but that's the way I was displaying them at the time. Now, with the clamshells that are out there now, I mean, they're great. Zolos, I think they're Zolos, and there's another company out there that's doing them too. Can't think of the name right now.
So is there like a superpower shrine at home?
Yeah.
Or are they spread out?
No, they're all together. They're all in one place, and that room is entered cautiously by everybody, including my wife. So yeah, they're all together. The windows are still covered in that room so that the sun can't hit them.
Well, speaking of your wife, because this is something that, this comes up on the show every now and then. In the first season, we did an episode called Wednesday Widows, where I spoke to the female significant others of the male guests,
That's funny.
Including my now wife. So that was really fun. And then this season, we did an episode with the dads. So we talked about how fatherhood has an effect on the collecting. So I guess, along those lines, how does your wife take all of this? What's her perspective?
My wife is very cool. She understands it. I don't think she understood it at first. It took a little while to ease her in. But when she saw I'm gonna say the passion that I have for it, she's been very supportive. She's very cool about it. She leaves me alone with it. She really doesn't get involved too much in it, and she'll stop me from pulling the trigger on a ridiculous purchase every now and then, but that's good. Honestly, it is. It's good for me because I can just keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good to have the balance.
Totally.
But no, that's awesome that she's on board with all of it.
She's very supportive.
And I mean, I have to say, for the most part, I mean, again, and the people who've been on the show and the dads that I talk to, I mean, that does seem to be the common theme, which is great to hear, because you would hope that the person that you're spending your life with is even if not participating, at least supportive and understanding of it.
It took it didn't happen right away. When I had this collection in one room at the house, my wife's a dog trainer, and we have a German Shepherd, and she would rip through the room every now and then, and I would get home and I would see 4 or 5 figures laying on the ground, and you see everything goes in a bag, the windows are covered, no sunlight, cardboard backing. I try to keep them in the best condition possible, so when you get home and there's 5 figures laying on the floor, it took a little while for her to understand that wasn't so cool.
Right.
But she got it.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before as well. I used to be incredibly particular and anal about the condition of everything, particularly the comic books. Like, I was never a huge, we were talking about this before we started recording, I was never a huge toy collector. Like, I had action figures that I played with, but it was really more statues and comics that I collected. And the comics in particular, I mean, they had to be in perfect condition. And I would, at the store where I worked, or if I went to another store, I would grab a stack of them off the shelf,
right,
and I would kind of fan through them and find the one that was in perfect condition. Now I really don't care so much. I've definitely loosened, but I can identify with that a lot.
I take that same mentality with the toys. I don't feel like everybody does, so I get a little anal with it. I'll admit. Down to the surface scratches on the blisters and the corners being tight. I sort of take the same mentality as comic book collectors do. I'm not a comic book collector. I'm definitely a toy collector. But I try to implement the same discretion with the condition, and the best condition possible, for sure.
Right. I know it's funny because, when we first started chatting, when we met this morning, you mentioned that comic books, you never really got into them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I find that interesting because you have, again, these representations of all these comic book characters. How come you never went down that road?
I think that the time when I would have been able to really get into reading the comic books would have been when I was younger. And I was really wrapped up with baseball. Baseball was my life when I was a kid. When I was older, it was easier for me to pick up a figure and put it into my collection than it was for me to sit down and read a comic, only because at that point, real life responsibilities were kicking in, and I think it was really just timing.
Right. No, I think that makes sense. And, for myself and a lot of the comic book fans and collectors I've spoken to, very few of them, in my experience, got into it as adults. It usually is something that, that kind of captures you when you're younger. And then, again, you certainly continue on with it. But I think there's something to finding it at that age.
I think the other thing that probably helped with not driving me toward the comics so much was the one figure line that I was most passionate about was directly tied to a cartoon.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I was really identifying with the figures because the cartoon was, I watched it religiously. I'll admit I still watch it. And those figures are, directly related to that. So if the figures that I collected more than something else was more related to a comic book character, then you know what? I can't say that I wouldn't have been a comic book collector or reader. Yeah. It's just sort of the way that one went, No,
that makes sense. So going back to Superpowers, I know they did a bunch of vehicles and play sets as well. I'm assuming you have those as well?
I do. I don't have multiples of the play sets. I don't have multiples of the vehicles. I have, a few Batmobiles. I'm always on the hunt for a nice Batcopter. Hall of Justice. I've sold a few of my loose Hall of Justice out of the store. I'm not as crazy for hunting down the play sets and the vehicles as I am the figures. And I think the reason why is space. They they take up a lot of space.
Yeah, the Hall of Justice is
The
not
Hall
small.
of Justice is huge. I mean, even the Calabac Boulder Bomber, it's a box. You know, I mean, they're boxes, so they take up a lot of room.
Right. What are the least favorite figures from the line, or do they all hold a special place?
My least favorite figure from the line. You know, when I first started collecting, my answer to that would have probably been different. I really don't know if I have a least favorite. I mean, Cyclotron was never one of my favorite, but I look at it now and I say that his action is pretty cool. The fact that his faceplate comes off is pretty cool.
Okay.
So I think I've learned to appreciate all of the figures. Some of the figures that I might have said in the beginning that weren't my favorite have come to be some of my favorite now. Like, for instance, the Penguin. I love the Penguin figure. It's classic. I love the colors on it. I love his accessories. It's just a great figure. All of them. I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah. No, I mean that's great.
I'm not sure there is a...
That's a good thing. I mean, especially you spent the time and money collecting them. Because again, that's something that's come up too. And that was one of my questions for you is what kind of collector you are, completist or more casual. And again, this has come up specifically with respect to comic book collecting, where if you're a completist, you will very likely end up buying and reading titles that you no longer enjoy, but you feel like you need to have them.
Right.
So the fact that you enjoy all of them, I think, is great.
Yeah, I definitely do. It's no one's ever asked me that question before. It's an interesting question.
I'm very curious as to your take on the recent re-releases that have been happening. Kotobukiya and Gentle Giant have been doing different versions, all different scales. So Gentle Giant has the micro figures and then the larger figures as well. Kotobukiya has ones, I guess they're somewhat in between. And I have, I guess, all the Superman ones that they've done so far. What are your thoughts on those?
My thoughts on those are the micros are... I'm not crazy about the micros because you lose a lot of the detail.
Yes.
You really do when it gets that small. I personally haven't picked up any of them. The large scale ones, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. The prototype large ones that were released, I think they were Comic-Con exclusives.
They were, yeah. I picked up the Superman one.
Yeah.
I waited online at the Gentle Giant booth on preview night, and I made sure I picked that up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then the Kotobukiya, which one? What scale were they? Were 8 inches? Or
I think somewhere around there.
7
Yeah,
or 8
they
inches?
weren't as like the Gentle Giant ones. Those are large. They were not that
Yeah,
big.
no. They're nice. I mean, they don't look exactly the way I thought they were going to look. I wanted them to actually be 7 or 8 inch scale of the original figure.
Yeah.
And the design has changed on them.
Yeah, which is kind of odd. I don't really get that.
I don't either.
Because the Gentle Giant ones, the jumbo figure, they really do look like them.
Oh, yeah,
The micro ones don't. I agree. They lost a lot in going that small.
Yes.
But the jumbo ones, they are beautiful.
They're great.
The Kotobuki ones are nice, but yeah, they don't. If you didn't have the packaging, you wouldn't know it was superpowers.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, they stuck with the classic colors and designs, but other than that, they're not really a re-release other than the name.
Right. Part of me would like a genuine re-release, same scale as the original. But,
Absolutely.
But I don't know. Is that something you would? I mean, you have so many of the originals.
I think I'm surprised that they haven't done it yet. I think that it may come. And yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a ton of toys coming out all the time now. Why not do it for a line that has proven itself to be able to stand the test of time? You know, I mean, it's a great line. So as long as they do it and do it right, you know, I like I said earlier, the simplistic accuracy of these figures. I mean, that for me is not just the superpowers, but Kenner in itself. I don't think anything compares to Kenner, and that's just my personal opinion. But they were able to really capture the essence of the characters without getting into the detail. And that's not to say that I don't like the detail in the new figures. The McFarlane, I think McFarlane changed the whole game as far as detail, and I think that's great. But when it comes to the capturing the essence of the character in a simple way, I think Kenner nails it with everything that they did.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, yeah, there certainly seems to be an audience for it, so, maybe one of these days we'll see it, and perhaps that would be an opportunity to do a Series 4, and maybe get some characters that we didn't see the first time around.
As long as they do it right, I'm all for it.
So I want to start to shift to the store itself, and so I know you said, when you were 25, you went to that vintage toy store, you got the Superpowers Flash, and then you started down this road, and you ended up amassing. I mean, how many items were in your collection, or are still in your collection, since the store is made up of that collection?
Yeah. In my mind, I separate that now. I have to. In my collection are my superpowers. That's it.
Okay, gotcha.
In the store, I have. I don't know. I think at one point the collection had probably gotten to 8,000 or 10,000 items. The store's been open for a couple of years now, so it's
how
like
many
a round
years-
robin. Toys coming in, toys
Gotcha.
going out now.
So how many years between that Superpowers Flash and opening the store?
I'm gonna say it was probably a 15-year
Okay.
span. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm looking around the store, and I mean the breadth of merchandise is really staggering. I mean, were you just not buying everything, but I mean, what were your collecting goals? I suppose.
DC Direct. Aside from Superpowers, I am a DC guy. DC Direct came out, and we had spoken earlier. The Superman release. When I saw that, it sort of kicked me off on DC Direct, and at that point, I tried to collect as many figures that had come out before that Superman figure, and then picked up with that line and just started collecting. So if you're on top of it when they're being released, it doesn't hurt as much, as it does, say, to now. If you started to collect DC Direct now, you would have to, So, yeah, I was fortunate enough to pick up the items as they were being released, and what I did was I put everything in plastic and bought multiples when I could. Did not spend much money on anything else, and basically just started amassing the collection.
I've mentioned this before, but I always encourage people to like and follow the My Comic Shop History Facebook page, because that's sort of, I don't do traditional show notes, but the Facebook page, that's essentially the show notes, and I'll often put up pictures to accompany the episodes, and I have my wife Stephanie here, and she's been taking some photos of the store. So if you're listening to this, I mean, I highly encourage you, go to the Facebook page, go to the It's Vintage Facebook page. You can see a ton of photos of everything that's in the store. I mean, we'd be here forever if I was describing everything, but it's like a mecca for collectors. And as a DC fan in particular, I see a lot of DC stuff, which is great. I mean, it's funny. I know for you, and this was one of the main things I wanted to talk about, because I know, preserving the past is sort of a mission that you have, and a mission for the store. And I mean, I walk in here, and it is like stepping into a time machine and seeing all of these figures, and in their packaging, no less. But all of these figures that I saw, on sale at the comic shop where I worked, which takes me back. But even beyond that, I mean, figures that I grew up playing with. I mean, I see a Lord Zed action figure from Power Rangers. Yes. So it's, what is it for you that drives you to want to preserve the past in this way? What's the appeal? The
appeal for me is, I think that nowadays things are moving so fast. Everything is every day something new is out. The technology, it's just, there's not much that's tangible anymore either. So these items are not only linked to my childhood, to my past, but they are symbolic of so many things to so many people, plus aside from the fact that they're like works of art, but I think what they represent to people is it's really a simple way to reconnect with the past for a lot of people, certainly me. And I'm not a huge technology guy, and it definitely is moving fast right now, and I think it's a way to step in here and sort of slow down for a minute and look around, remember, talk about. I mean, I have people come in that see a certain figure, and we could stand here and talk an hour about that figure or that figure line, and when you're done, they walk out and they say, wow, that was really cool. I don't have time to remember. I haven't remembered or reminisced about something like that in a long time. And anything that could bring that on or, ignite that conversation, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll really be able to put this into words, but, a lot of this season for me, because it's always, while we tackle, I think, some interesting issues for comic book fans and collectors and all that, this show for me is always very personal. So, in the first season, saying goodbye to my store. And even this season, a lot of it for me was, I started reading monthly comic books again after a long absence. And for me, it was really about trying to recapture that Wednesday new comic book day rush that I had when I was younger and that I hadn't had in a long time.
Right.
And sort of my takeaway after conducting my experiment and talking about it on the show is that you can't really go back again, because I found I couldn't recreate that experience. I found that, that passion and that excitement exists in other ways for me. Now, that was sort of my conclusion at the end of the season.
Sure.
But, stepping into this store, it definitely conjures feelings, and it's something very, palpable and powerful. And, again, I don't worry, Steph. I'm not gonna become a huge toy collector now. We don't have the space, but it definitely does something.
Sure.
Again, I maybe not being as articulate as I want to be, but it definitely does conjure those feelings. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I do get a lot of people that come in and they'll pick up an item that they see and they want to put it on their desk at work because it's the toy that they played with. I mean, I personally have, a couple of items in the store or items that I've sold that sting when they walk out the door because there is a certain memory that's attached to that item. I had a 12-inch Christopher Reeve Mego when I was a kid, and I used to lay on my bed for hours, just not so much playing with him, but studying him, looking at him, the design of him. I could remember the way he smelled. That plastic smell and looking at the cape and the boots. And so whenever I see that figure, it brings up very strong memories of having him as a kid. And I had my brother who was a couple of years younger than I was, and we were always playing with different toys. So certain toys definitely bring up the past or help hold on to it. And I do get people that come in and will pick up an item just for that reason, just to not to collect, but just to put it on their desk or in their office because there's certain memories or feelings attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting component of this store that, it consists of your personal collection.
Yeah.
Which I think, adds a wrinkle to it. It's not like these are things that you ordered through Diamond Comics and you got in a box and you unpacked them and put them on a shelf. I mean, these were in your home. I mean, it's definitely very different than other stores.
Yes. And when people come in, I do get into conversation with some customers. When it's your collection that you're opening a store with and didn't have the intention of selling, you're collecting what you hope to be the best of what you can find. So the store really is comprised of the best of what I could find for my personal collection at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what's interesting too is seeing all of these things, in one place, because obviously they all came out at different times over decades. And while there certainly has been overlap, I mean, I'm looking around. I mean, there's definitely a bunch of stuff that I remember seeing on the wall together at Alternate Realities, for example. So I see the Batman Hush figures and the figures that they did based on the Alex Ross Justice series, for example. But there's so much, there's so much other merchandise here that, never shared wall space.
Right.
And to see it all together, I mean, obviously it's a store, but it also does have that museum quality to it as well, where you really have preserved something and put together a representation of an entire hobby.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I'm here so many hours in the day, and it almost reminds me of my toy room at home, so this is where I am all day. This is where I do my customs. This is where I'm working all day, and I'm surrounded by all of the items that I collected, so it's kind of cool. It's like my office,
Right.
Yeah.
So you said you've been in business now a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so what led you from collector to retailer? What was the impetus behind opening a store with your collection?
Not being 100% happy in what I was doing before. Was in the printing business and a family business. And I think in trying to decide what I wanted to do or what my next step will be, either stay in the printing business or try and find something that I was passionate about, this was the most logical answer. I mean, I had so many items that if you're able to open up a store and not have to lay out for merchandise,
Right. Yeah.
The hardest part was really just having a conversation with myself and saying, this is what we're going to do, because it wasn't just the figures, it wasn't just the toys. They're books. I did open with 3,000 comics. I wasn't a huge comic book guy, but along the way I did pick up comic books and they're in here. So there were a lot of different items that I really just had to sit down and say, it's perfect for opening up a store. My biggest concern was I didn't think that I would have enough to fill the space. It turns out
It all worked out.
It turns out that I had more than enough.
Yeah, I'm curious about the store, the business aspect. I mean, again, that's what, that was the origin of this podcast, was talking about running a store and all of that. And again, I worked at a store for many years, so I've been on the other side of the counter. What has your experience been like here? I mean, have you enjoyed the past couple of years?
Yeah, it took a little while. It's like a warm bath, you ease into it. And I think I'm not a big people person, not very social and outgoing. So it's actually helped me in that aspect because I'm dealing with customers all the time now.
I had something similar because again, I started working at the store in high school, and I was definitely on the more shy and reserved side. And I credit working at the store with me kind of getting past that, because you're dealing with people all day and all different kinds of people, different ages, different professions, everything. And it forces you to get over that.
It does. And you're also talking about something you're passionate about.
Yep.
So you couple those two things together and it sort of gets the ball rolling on something that it takes you out of your comfort zone, but sort of gives you a security blanket at the same time. So I've had some nice relationships that have been built through collecting. It's definitely brought me out a little bit, which is cool. But I think the biggest thing is when I was collecting, I felt like at the time I was the only collector. And I don't know if that's exactly the best way to say it, but I felt like the only thing that mattered was me and my collection. I didn't think about anybody else's collections. I didn't really care about anyone else's collections. I knew what I wanted. I went out and I got it. I collected it. Once I opened and collectors started to come into me and I started to see their collections, it was definitely eye-opening. I got a chance to see other people's collections and what they're passionate about. And there are some amazing collections out there. And there's some amazing items, and people who take care of their items the same way I do. And it's like this revelation. You're not the only one, you know? So I think that's one of the coolest things is getting a look at some of the other collections that are out there and some of the other collectors that are out there. So that's been pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can imagine. And so what sort of clientele have you attracted? Like, do you have regulars, or is it more, just people, exploring, or both, I guess?
I do have regulars. I have both. But I do have regulars. And then I have people who, will come in once every 6 months and say, I'm looking for a big gym camper. And I don't have it, but they know that I could find it for them. So a lot of people coming in looking for items that I don't have, but I get a lot of people in the area that come in looking for specialty gifts because they remembered it when they were a kid, or their brother had it when they were a kid. A lot of women coming in looking to get their brother a Star Wars or a Superman figure that they remember seeing him play with for his 40th or 50th birthday. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's the regulars that drive it. The regular customers that keep coming back, they're the ones that drive it. So I think that continually trying to let the collectors know that I'm here is really the best thing, because I know that if I walked into a store like this as a collector, it's definitely a store that I would want to spend some time in. There's some pretty cool items in here.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'm enjoying our conversation, I mean, I'm excited once we're done recording to really explore a bit more and definitely pick up some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it really is remarkable. Is it safe to assume people have a similar reaction as I did when I walked in? Because it really, it's eye-catching.
Yes, the ones that are, I have one collector in particular. He's a comic book collector, and when he came in the first time, he wasn't interested in the toys at all. He wanted to know what comic books I had, and I laid it out for him pretty quickly that I wasn't a comic book store. I do have some comics, and I pointed him in the direction of the best ones that I have, key issues. And, he flipped through, and being a big comic book collector, there was nothing in there that really floated his boat. But he did stop for a minute and take a look around at the toys. And, after a couple of conversations, he's become one of my best customers. So while he still collects comic books, he's now learned to appreciate the toy collecting and the condition and the rarity of and the variance on some of the figures, and that's really what turns him on. I think is he loves having items that there aren't mass-produced numbers on, so he keeps coming back for that reason, and that's just him.
And then I guess what is the relationship like with the customers in general? I mean, do they try to haggle? Is that a piece of the transaction? Because we would get that all the time, too, at the store. And I would imagine here it would probably be much more so.
It's definitely an aspect of this that I didn't expect. I really didn't. I didn't expect people to... I figured, what's the difference between me and Toys R Us, Yeah, I don't see anybody haggling in the Toys R Us line. Yes, people will come in and they will say to me, what's the best price you can do on this? What's the best price you can do on that? And I'll always try to work with them for sure. And I always take care of the customers that continually come back. I do find it funny that people even ask that question sometimes. But I think the one thing that I find myself doing more than anything else is explaining to people the age. They walk in and right away they see 20-year-old figure that looks like it came out yesterday because of the condition, and they have a hard time believing that it's 20 or 25 years old. So, I get into a conversation with them and I explain it to them, and they appreciate it. So they appreciate it more times than not, and then they begin to understand, the rarity or even the price on some of the stuff.
Right. Yeah, that was something we ran into at Alternate Realities all the time, and we had a similar reaction. I remember we would always vent about this. We would say, like, you don't go to Best Buy and
Right.
slap a DVD down and say, hey, I know it says 20, can you do 15? So why are you doing the same thing at our comic book store? But it's, I guess we always talk about the community, atmosphere. That was a big part of Alternate Realities. I mean, it sounds like that's, a component here as well. And I think, that maybe that cuts both ways, right? So you're able to have these conversations. Like, I've never had an extended conversation with a Best Buy cashier. I'm not opposed to it, but it's never happened.
Right.
Whereas I've had a ton of those at the comic shop. And I guess, again, it cuts both ways because then you do get the haggling. So it's part of the, part of the whole deal, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that the customers that come in and the ones that continually come back, I think the one thing that we share as opposed to going into Best Buy is or any other large store is that the item that's being sold or looked at is something that both of us are passionate about most times. So
Right.
I think that somebody's always going to try and get the best price they can. So I do understand that, and that's just human nature. And I always try my best to work with them. But I think that some pretty cool relationships have come out of regular customers coming in, people that I wouldn't normally have met.
Have any of those translated to friendships outside of the store?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely cool. It's, again, people that I would have never met. So I definitely keep in touch with quite a few people, and it's put me in contact with some other people who do similar things in the field that help me in my day-to-day. So yeah, it's definitely cool.
Going back to the pricing, so, how do you come up with the prices? I assume if it's something that you've acquired for the store, how much you paid for it goes into it. But for most of the items that are coming from your personal collection, how do you determine the prices?
I'll look at the current prices, past
Like on
sales.
eBay?
Yeah, past sales, stuff like that. And I factor in majorly the condition. A lot of time and effort has gone into keeping the item, and that's where sometimes there's a disconnect. There aren't a ton of people that collect mint in package. I know that they are out there. So I have a mint in package 2002 Teen Titans Beast Boy, and he looks like he was just pulled from a case because he was. And somebody will walk in and say, I can get that for $15 cheaper online. And it's the condition. They're going to open that figure anyway. So I try to be honest with them and tell them that they should pick up the one where they're going to rip it open and just display the figure. I also try to work with them as best I can. So I look at past sales, I look at the rarity, the demand. That's just for the carded figures. The loose figures, there's definitely whatever the current, that's just basically the way it goes. And there's some condition that goes into it too. The customs is a whole different thing.
Are you ever reluctant to sell something if it seems like, or I guess, are you more likely to part with something when you know it's going to a fellow collector who's going to keep it in that package? Are you ever reluctant if you know it's going to be ripped open?
It's a good question. I was at first. When I first opened, yes. It affected me more than I thought it was going to affect me. I actually have a story. A mother came in here and she bought her son a Spider-Man figure, 1990 Spider-Man figure, not a big deal. but I'm being the collector that I am. I spoke to the mother and I said, well, it wouldn't be a bad idea to keep it in its package and just put it up on the shelf, and he'll have it in 10 years and 20 years, and it'll go up in value and it'll be really cool. And she said, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be ripped open before we even get out the door. So I said, well, you know what? Once it's done, it's done. It's yours. And sure enough, walking to the car, the figure was ripped open, and the little guy threw the card back on the ground, and they pulled away. And I ran out. And picked it up and brought it in, slipped it into a comic book slip, and filed it away with the rest of the stuff that I collect. I mean, that's just the way I am. It's not just the figure for me. The card backs are amazing. The artwork, the design, and maybe that I'm an artist, so maybe that has something to do with it. Coming from printing my whole life, maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe it's just because they're cool.
Right. Well, it's good that you were able to at least, get past that and let it go.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
it just makes the other ones all the more rare, right? There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I will sell an item to somebody and explain it to them, and sometimes it does strike a nerve or hit a chord, and they'll say, you know what, I think I'm gonna keep it in its package and put it in my put it in the corner display down in the man cave or in the bar, so that's kind of cool.
Well, it's funny because I think to the 40-Year-Old Virgin movie, maybe not the best depiction of us collectors, but there's always a bit that makes me laugh where the main character, he's selling off a bunch of his stuff on eBay, and he's having a little bit of a crisis about it, and he says it's like, and they were all in their packaging, and he says to his girlfriend, he's like, do you know how hard it was as a kid to not open this? So, I can imagine that's probably a tough sell when you have, a parent with a child or just a child and, trying to say, hey, don't open this.
I get a lot of parents that come in and they look at me and they say, oh, you poor kid. You didn't play with any of your toys. And I say, no, that really wasn't the case. I started collecting when I got older, but
I didn't have to ask it because it came up when we were talking, but I was curious about that because I know ahead of time you mentioned this was your personal collection.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if it was stuff from as a kid, and that's why I was like, wow, if he kept all of these things sealed, that's some incredible willpower there.
I wish that I had some of these items when I was a kid. I told you my neighbor was a huge Star Wars collector, and it ended up working against me because he was a couple years older than me, and he had every Star Wars figure, and we played with him every day, and he was very, very sharing, and there was really no reason for me to run out and buy them, and I was actually young anyway, so we would just play with his figures, and at the end of the day, he's got 200 Star Wars figures in his attic that he played with as a kid, and I have a Gamorrean guard somewhere, and he's got some great stuff. I'm sure there's plenty that are still buried in his yard, but I think that worked against me too.
And then as far as cultivating the inventory and acquiring collections or pieces of collections, how do you typically, what is your buying process? I mean, where do you go? What sort of stuff do you look for? I know the condition is important, but as far as what sorts of things you're looking for?
It's something that I thought about when I opened. I put a lot of thought into how I was going to rebuild. I didn't think about the fact that my items were in such good condition that I was going to have a hard time finding stuff that I wanted to actually attach my name to, because if people buy from me, I have some customers that buy to me specifically because the condition is so near flawless on a lot of these items. It's hard for me to find other items that are like that. I imagined when I opened that I would have to go out and find a lot of these items on the road. I would have to go to conventions, shows, and it really didn't. I do go to them. I do go and I'll look around, but believe it or not, a lot of very cool items come right to me. People bring them right in, and most of them are loose, but that's okay because someone might not want to spend for a mint and package item, so I'll have the loose one, which is cool because it gives me more of a selection in the store too. But other collectors come in, they bring in their collections, we trade. So I do trade with other collectors, and that's very cool for me because I have multiples on a lot of these items, so it gives me a wider variety of items too. And most other collectors do a pretty good job of keeping their items in good condition.
Yeah, you speak the same language.
Right.
Well, it's funny. At Alternate Realities, we would often have people coming in looking to sell their comics, and we called it shattering their dreams when we informed them that what they had wasn't actually worth that much. That comes from the store's owner, who wonderful guy with the kindest heart, but really doesn't care for people all that much.
I understand that.
Or so he says. But anyway, but we called it shattering dreams because people would come in with comics from the 80s or 90s, and they thought that it was really old and worth a lot, and we had to disabuse them of that notion. Yeah. And when we did pick up collections, it was stuff from 50s, 60s, 70s. Mm-hmm. So I mean, how often do you have to shatter dreams here? And do you take delight in it? Because he really did.
I do not. It happens a lot, actually. I think that what happens more often, though, is when somebody walks in with a bag of toys and they think that it's nothing. That's actually something that happens more often.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They'll walk in with an old bag of figures, and they'll say, these figures aren't in their package. They're all beat up, and I will look through them, and I'll say, I'll give you X amount of dollars for it. And they'll say, oh, wow. I didn't think they were worth anything. I was just going to drop them off at Goodwill.
And just building along this idea of buying. So, like, if you sell the Hush figure, for example, that I'm staring at, the Hush figure from the Hush line, is that something you would look to replace, or it's gone and you're glad you sold it and that's it?
Right. Well, I don't have to replace it because I have. I think when that line came out, I purchased a couple of cases of those, so I'm lucky in that sense. I don't mean to interrupt, but with Hush in particular, this breaks my heart because I had all of those and I opened them, and then I just brought them to the comic shop and put them out for like $1 loose, and that was it. And now I'm seeing the prices on these, and I really wish that I had not done that. Yeah. I mean, when I first opened, it's an interesting question. When I first opened, when I sold an item, I would immediately, that day, start looking for that figure again. And I stopped doing that probably 6 months into being open. So no, but if it's a special item and it sells, my radar will go up and I'll start looking for a replacement if possible. Or I will take that opportunity to pick up a figure that I didn't have in store before that figure went out. So it's like a revolving door of DC in here. It's sort of what it feels like. There's Marvel too, but
yeah. Well, I'm a fellow DC guy, so you're in good company, and I'm So this is our holiday special here. Anything that's been particularly hot or popular this Christmas holiday season?
Yeah, anything that's tied to the movies. Whatever movie's out right now, people come in almost religiously looking for anything they can find that's related to that movie. So, Doctor Strange, the Avengers, they'll come in. It doesn't matter what the item is. They don't care if it's new or if it's old. They just want something that says that.
Speaking of new items, so we talk a lot on this show about the Funko Pop vinyl figures. I see at least one here in the store.
I don't know how we got in here.
Yeah, I know. This is all about, preserving the past. So right. I suspect I might know the answer to this, but what are your thoughts on the Pops?
I got to tell you, I'm not crazy about them. Okay. But I appreciate the following that they have, and the jury's still out on that. I need to see if they stand the test of time because I'm waiting for that bubble to burst. I am, because they just keep going. Some of the prices that they're getting on some of the rare variant and special releases are amazing. They make you stop for a minute and take a look. When I look at them, I find myself doing the same thing that I always do. I'm looking for the classic characters. I'm looking for the classic suits. I'm looking for the classic colors, the ones that I remember. And the one thing that they do that I think is pretty cool is that the spectrum is very broad. I honestly don't know if I could come up with a character at this point that hasn't been made in a pop figure. So there's something for everybody out there. But no, it's not something. That's not something I'm crazy about.
So my wife and I, we are big fans of them. We have about 100.
Do you really?
Most of them are TV related.
Okay.
And that's what we like about them. That
You can relate to them.
Right. And these are characters and properties that otherwise aren't represented in that kind of form. But it's interesting because this Christmas special is going to be a double header. So we have our conversation, and then I also just recorded a conversation with a gentleman who runs a store that sells a ton of pops. So it'll be an interesting balance.
Very well.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting to hear him talk about it, and he really has his finger on the pulse of this industry and all of that. And so a lot of the things kind of that you were mentioning, we get into that a lot in the other half of the Christmas special.
Does he sell the pops because he's passionate about them, or does he sell them because they're hot and people are buying them?
Both. He's a pretty shrewd entrepreneur, so that's part of it.
Okay.
But he's a fan and collector himself.
He
so
is.
He has that. There's that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's been some pops that have come out that have, I'm gonna say, I had a hard time walking past. The ones that you see in the store, honestly, not sure how they got in here. But the Wonder Woman with the invisible jet.
Sure, yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. There's some neat stuff.
Yeah. Hey, look, one day people will be just very happy that they collected them, right? They'll be vintage one day.
Yeah. And I give you a lot of credit because I really could spend the entire rest of the day here going through everything, and that's not because it's a mess and I have to dig through things. It's just everything's organized very well, but there's a lot to kind of sink your teeth into.
Yeah. And if I had it my way, I would have twice the amount displayed out here. But my wife comes through once a week and cherry picks items off the walls and puts them back into inventory. And she said you can't. You're gonna overwhelm people, she said.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she keeps me organized, and and I think that might have something to do with the store that I walked into the first time when I picked up those figures, because that store was a store very much like that. You had to dig through. You had to find, almost everything was a buried treasure. If it was a vintage T-shirt, the X-Men Wolverine T-shirt in the corner I got from that store. I dug it out of a corner. Ben Cooper, Batman mask. Yep, I dug it out of the corner. So I have a connection to that, and I sort of like things like that. But she comes in and she pulls down and organizes.
I do find that very interesting to sort of purposely hold back so as to not overwhelm people.
Right.
But it gives them a reason to come back if they know that there are always, new old things coming through.
And she reminds me a lot to be careful not to overwhelm people. You want to give each item its room. This is things about retail that I don't know. So she said, you want to give each item its own room, let people be able to see it. You don't want to tuck it away. You don't want to hide it. So I'm a collector, I'm trying to figure out the retailing side now.
So, how much more is out there that's being held back?
Probably another couple thousand figures that are not on the floor now.
Okay.
Yeah. In this condition, I'm again very particular about the condition, which is why I don't really set up at the conventions too much.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. If you do any shows.
I don't. I go there and I look for items. I'm friends with some of the people that sell, and as far as bringing my items there and setting up, I think it's a lot of wear and tear on your items, and especially if you do multiple conventions. It's just for me, it would be very, very stressful having to get each item there, make sure it's in the condition that I want it to be in, and then bring it back and set it up, and then constantly doing this back and forth would be just too stressful for me.
I see obviously a lot of action figures, but I also see some other somewhat unusual items. I see some Justice League toothpaste. Is that right?
Yeah, Justice League toothpaste, 2003. That's the Star Wars collector that it's his fault that that's there actually. He had purchased some Star Wars toothpaste in 1978, and I think it went on to become like a very rare toothpaste, $250. You couldn't find it anywhere, one of those type deals. And I saw it and I picked it up. Yeah. I mean, I literally had an 8 to 10 year period where if it was superhero related, I picked it up or at least tried to.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So there, a guest who's been on the show before, Brian Claudio, he is one of the biggest Marvel collectors you're ever likely to meet. And he has all the statues and action figures and all of that, but he really likes to find the more oddball items. So I'm looking up and I see a Captain America belt buckle, right? Like that would be right up his alley.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It still has the gumballs in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Secret Wars. Yeah, with the secret gumball dispenser. Yep. I mean, you could find them out there, but to find it with the original gumballs is pretty cool.
Well, I've enjoyed this so much. As we start to kind of wrap up here, because, it's time to do some business. I did want to touch on the custom figures that you do, because I do find that very interesting. So, how did, or when did that enter the picture for you to actually customize, existing action figures and create either variations or different characters? How did that start for you?
When I first started collecting, I'm always doing or trying to do something creative. So with all of my attention being on collecting and action figures, it only made sense for me to try and do something, and it's in my nature to try and make something better. So what I would do is I would buy wrestling figures because it was almost like a blank canvas.
Because you had no attachment to those.
Right. And I would create superheroes out of them. And that was fun, but it was all very new to me. I was using the wrong paints. I had no idea what I was doing. As time went on, I started to customize Masters of the Universe figures. Thor, He-Man, the crossovers, and I thought that they were pretty cool. So I started to do a lot of those and put those into my collection. And when I opened up, they started to sell pretty well. People were into those. So it just progressed. And then I got into customizing the superpowers. Now, that was a really, really tricky thing for me because, as I told you, I had close to 350 loose superpowers figures, and very much varying in condition. So when it came down to customizing any of them, they needed to be in the worst condition possible, like a condition that nobody was going to buy, a condition that no one would even want in their collection. I'm talking broken arms, take pieces from other ones, putting them together. So it took a while for me to get comfortable with doing that.
Yeah, I would imagine as a collector, especially with your favorite line,
right?
To
it was
dismantle
it
and repaint your favorite figures.
Yes, it was definitely tough. But I had confidence in the fact that I could do it and do it somewhat well, and I started to do it. Now, it was also harder working in that scale than it was working with 6-inch, and I started to get into it, and it was fun. I was getting a good response on them. And then through posting them on Instagram, I've met some other people. Now, there's some amazing superpowers customizers that are out there now. I met this one guy, goes by the Cape Master. Provides me with any cape I need for my customs, which totally finishes off the figure. Believe it or not, superpowers capes are not easy to come by. People don't get rid of them. Original capes, original Batman capes could sell for $35 to $40, and there are just not a lot of them out there. So, this guy makes amazing capes, and basically will make anything made to order, anything I need. So he does a great job, and it finishes off my customs, which in turn gives me more confidence in doing the customs. But what I do is I try to create figures that were never created, or I try to take a figure and make it relevant with a storyline today. New 52 figure, Nightmare Batman. I have a good time with it, and I've been doing it long enough now and I've sold enough of them now where I've actually have a fan base that come back to me for them, and they'll commission certain figures. So yeah, it's fun. That's really definitely cool. Fun. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite Superpowers customs that you've done?
Believe it or not, one of my favorite ones is the Lex one. The Clark Kent, which was again a very long conversation with myself when it came down to doing this, but Lex Luthor on the Clark Kent body. So basically just repainted the suit into a black suit and black tie, and did a head swap. So it's it's a slight custom, more of a modification.
Okay.
And but what's cool is that you get the Lex suit with it, with Lex's head is off and the suit stands behind him. And it's sort of in a glass case.
That's very cool.
Yeah, they come together. It's pretty cool.
That's very cool. And while that incorporates your background as an artist and your love of this, so that's really a perfect fit.
Yeah, it is. It's like a dream job, really.
I don't know, is it maybe inevitable at a certain point to start getting into customs? Because once for the Superpowers, for example, you have all of them so many times over. At a certain point, is it inevitable that it's like, okay, I have to make different ones?
It's inevitable for me. I'm not sure that it's inevitable for somebody else. It's not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's not easy to do a custom that you feel confident putting out into the world and saying, hey, like, I'm attaching my name to this. This is whatever the figure is that you've created, and it's got to look good, But more importantly, you want to try to keep it as functional as possible. You want to keep the action that the figure comes with, and you want all the limbs to move. You want the head to spin. It takes time to learn how to do these things. But more importantly, the things that complement your customs make the customs better. So we were saying the Cape Master, that's great. But there's also people out there that are customizing cards. So to take your custom and to put it on a card and reseal it, and you're able to now put that in with your carded collection, makes a huge difference.
Well, I saw one of the photos on your Facebook page was the Clark Kent in a custom package, which it's so funny because in doing my research on the Superpowers line, we mentioned that was the Clark Kent was the mail away, and from what I understand, I mean, it came in a plain cardboard box or just an envelope or something, right?
It came in the Kenner mail away bag, and there is through collecting and through retailing, I met a guy. His name's Thomas. He can I give him a shout out?
Yeah, please, feel free.
His you can get in touch with him, Thomas, at qhsteam.com. And he is amazing. I mean, he does these really great Superpowers cards with resealable blisters where you could just pop the blister open, put the figure in, and then close it again. And the artwork on it is, look, I understand that with technology today, almost anybody could probably recreate a Superpowers card, but you've got to sort of be a collector or a fan of it to know the little things that go into it. And I personally can't do it because I'm not that tech savvy, but he does a great job. And yeah, he made that card for me, and the figure pops right in. It fits right in with the collection. So yeah, there's some people out there that help the whole custom process and make it easier to start ripping any figure apart, which, believe me, there's always a conversation in my head about.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Well, I got to tell you, I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you for taking the time to do this and having me at your store.
Absolutely.
To anyone listening to this, again, I suspect if you're listening to the show, you're probably into this sort of thing. please, check out It's Vintage. Where can people find you guys?
They can find us on Instagram at its.vintage.
And it's with a Z.
ITZ. And we are also on eBay storefront. Or you can find us at itsvintage.com.
And the Facebook page as well, and I do encourage people to check that out because you can see photos of so much of the merchandise and of the customs as well. There's some really cool stuff on there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to say about your store? Anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to chat about? Anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think that's it. Collectors should come down and see us. If we don't have it, we'll find it for you.
There you go. What more could you want than that? Well, Alan, thank you so much for being on the show and being a part of the My Comic Shop History Christmas special.
Thank you. It was fun.
To all of the listeners, thank you for tuning in. Keep listening. Stay tuned for news on Season 3. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and as always, don't be a flat squirrel.
Ho, 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 ho.